Chapter 295. So-called wall reflection was both a method of cultivation for Buddhists, as well as a method of punishment. 3 years of wall reflection was 3 years of house arrest. During these 3 years they could not communicate with anyone, could not move about freely, and could not have any form of entertainment. It was even more terrifying than being imprisoned. The dullness was enough to drive a regular person mad. It was also a great test of the mind for Buddhist disciples. This talented but rather impetuous disciple had always been the One-Thought Master's favorite disciple. In the past, the One-Thought Master would definitely be overjoyed if he volunteered to face the wall in the cliffside grotto, but at a time like this he probably felt like giving up on himself. The more talented they were, the easier it was for them to become dejected and depressed compared to regular people once they suffered setbacks. Have you really thought it through? Yes. Mind Enlightenment lowered his head deeply into the ground. Thinking back to all the years he had spent in the Ansrava temple, all of his pride and status had vanished with this word. He was filled with endless disappointment and sorrow. Tears fell like rain as he sobbed aloud. The One-Thought Master rubbed his head. Don't cry, don't cry. This might be good for you. Master, I've embarrassed you. Mind Enlightenment hugged the One-Thought Master's leg like a wronged child. He had returned to the time when he first joined the Ansrava temple and he was still a little novice monk. No, you've always been my best disciple. You have to keep it together. The One-Thought Master could not help but redden. The monks in the temple all shed tears as well. Their first senior brother had many problems, but he had always taken care of them. Now that he was going to face the wall for 3 years they felt sad too. Li Qingshan rubbed his nose and thought, why do I feel like Little N and I are the bad guys? After crying, Mind Enlightenment seemed to ease up a lot. He bid farewell to his master and junior brothers and went to the cliffside grotto by himself to cultivate. From beginning to end, he never glanced at Little N again. That child made him feel fear. This fear did not come from the strike that Little N had almost killed him. Instead, it came from the strike that had cut through the Vajra monk's spade. Although it had only lasted for a short moment, he felt a bone-chilling coldness that suppressed his power and will. His indestructible Vajra monk's spade had snapped under that power, or in other words his will. The One-Thought Master watched Mind Enlightenment leave before turning around. Looking at Little Ann, he opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Should he reprimand him? Should I praise him? But no matter which one it was, it didn't seem right. Only one thing was certain. He wouldn't be the child's master for long. You've mastered the first level of the Vajra subdual art? Yes, master. The crowd burst into an uproar. The monks looked at each other at a loss. They could see their own expressions on each other's faces. The Vajra subduing demon art was taught in the 100 schools of thought at the prefectural level. 1_1 could already be considered a secret and powerful technique. At the peak of cultivation one could form a Vajra relic just like the Taoist Golden Core realm. Little N suddenly asked, Master, are you afraid? The corner of the One-Thought Master's eye twitched. He chanted the Buddha's name several times, stopping only after quite a while. He took out his primary disciple's tablet. He placed it in Shaoan's palm. From today onwards, you are now the chief disciple of my Buddhist school. Martial prowess alone isn't enough. You also need to be profound in the Buddhist Dharma and be able to withstand the doubts of your junior brothers and sisters. Little N said, Yes, Master. The One-Thought Master wanted to give him a few more words of advice, but he ended up sighing gently. Don't forget to uphold the Buddha's will to love your fellow disciples. You shouldn't have used that strike on your fellow disciples. He was reluctant to let Little N take up the position of primary disciple right now, but who else in the Ansrava temple possessed the ability to replace Mind Enlightenment's position? Even if they could, how long could they sit there for? Was it half a year or 3 months? As a result, Little N became the youngest primary disciple in the history of the 100 schools of thought of the Clear River Prefecture. If it were not for Li Qingshan's existence, he would be the primary disciple with the lowest cultivation in history. Little N wanted to retort, but Li Qingshan pressed down on her shoulder and shot her a glance. The One-Thought Master is right. Why don't you thank Master? Little N said obediently, Thank you, Master. The One-Thought Master frowned and said sternly, Li Qingshan, before Little N reaches the first layer of the Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual, no one is allowed to disturb her. That's my order, so why do you keep pestering him? His beloved disciple had lost his status as the primary disciple and was sent to prison, so how could he not be angry? He was unable to lash out at Little N, so he obviously went to find the troublemaker, Li Qingshan instead. The One-Thought Master, the disciples of the 100 schools. We're of the same breath and branch, sharing weal and woe. Can't he even come to Ansrava Island to find someone? Before Li Qingshan could say anything, a voice rang out from the direction of the forest of pagodas. Turning around, he saw Lu Chuanfeng riding over on a huge, white crane. After holding hands with Sun Fubai, he even took out some alcohol and dishes, drinking a few cups together. When he received the news, he paled in fright and rushed over in a hurry. Right now, Li Qingshan was like a golden ingot to him. If anything happened to him, the school of novels would probably be crippled. By then, he would not even have a place to cry. Master, Mind Enlightenment has publicly humiliated our school of novels, harming our friendship with the academy. He even tried to harm us over a slight disagreement, so why are you blaming us instead? Lu Chuanfeng leapt down from White Crane Mountain and landed before Li Qingshan, clasping his hands. When Li Qingshan saw how his wide sleeves fluttered in the wind and his green robes drifted about, he really did seem rather graceful, which was the first time his opinion of him had changed slightly. The one thought master happened to be rather infuriated, but when he saw how Lu Chuanfeng was bold enough to make a fuss before him, he widened his eyes. There was no need for him to unleash his guardian king's avatar. A great, dignified pressure crushed down heavily. Lu Chuanfeng bowed deeply. I'm sorry. It's all my school of novels' fault. Please forgive me, master. Damn disciple, why don't you apologize to the master? Li Qingshan grinned and resisted the urge to slap him across the mouth. With a school leader like that, was there any need to worry about the school of novels not being crippled? In the end, the matter was left unsettled. Li Qingshan took Little and back to Cloud Wisp Island for a visit. Along the way, Lu Chuanfeng tried to approach him several times, but he avoided him. He did not want Little and to be influenced by someone like him. Returning to Cloud Wisp Island, they arrived in the bamboo courtyard. There was already someone waiting there. The leader of the school of Confucianism, Lu Changqing, stood with his hands behind his back, listening to the rustling of the trees with his eyes closed. A while later he opened his eyes just now. It's been so many years, but the scenery here is still so beautiful. It's just a pity. Lu Chuanfeng obviously knew what he meant by pity, but all he could do was smile dryly and bow. School leader Lu, long time no see. However, Lu Changqing did not seem to see him. He said to Li Qingshan honestly, Li Qingshan, what are your conditions for leaving the school of novels? Let's hear it. He did not treat Lu Chuanfeng as a human at all. Lu Chuanfeng's smile stiffened, but he dared not show any displeasure. He looked at Li Qingshan for help, almost pleading. However, Li Qingshan did not look at him. He said to Lu Changqing in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, Sir Lu, can I join another school if I leave the school of novels? Lu Chuanfeng's face was ashen. Lu Changqing shook his head. No. Even if you leave, you can only leave as a disciple of the school of novels. However, I can recommend you to a very impressive sect for cultivation, the Pine Suff Courtyard of the Tianhu Mountain. It's quite renowned across the entire Green Province. The head of the courtyard is already a golden core master who has undergone 2 heavenly tribulations. You'll have a much better future there than in the 100 schools of thought of the Clear River Prefecture. Lu Chuanfeng had already lost all hope. No one could turn down something as good as this. Li Qingshan said, apologies. Thank you for your kind intentions, school leader, but please forgive me for being unable to accept it. Lu Changqing frowned. What conditions do you have? Feel free to tell me. Li Qingshan smiled at Little Anne and held her hand. No matter what conditions you have, I won't accept them. We can't be separated. Lu Changqing said, do you know that there's a saying that it's better to forget about each other than to help each other in difficult times? All good things must come to an end. Separation is only a matter of time. If you stay here, she'll leave you behind very soon with her cultivation speed. By then, what will you do? If you go to the Pine Suff Courtyard, you might be able to see her again in the future. Or are you trying to use her for your own benefits? Be it patient guidance or clever words, Lu Zhangqing's every word struck at a vital point. Li Qingshan was unable to maintain his smile. In the end, he let out a gentle sigh. Perhaps you're right. Little Anne's heart tightened. Lu Changqing smiled. However, I've already heard far too much about the great principles of this world. Right now, I just want to follow my heart. My heart tells me that I want to be with her. To be honest, I don't believe in forever, but the longer, the better. He shrugged his shoulders. Until death do us part. The wind rustled, the bamboo forest swayed, and the shadows swayed. Lu Changqing had already left. He believed that he had a good eye for people, but when such a man said such words, it meant that his beliefs were as firm as a boulder, unshakable. Lu Chuanfeng said excitedly, "Thank you, thank you." The School of Novels had escaped a calamity. Li Qingshan said, "I didn't do it for you." Lu Chuanfeng said, "Then thank you anyway. I'll go prepare lunch to celebrate you officially joining the School of Novels." Li Qingshan said, "It's only 9 o'clock now." But Lu Chuanfeng had already floated into the bamboo house, humming a song. He saw Little Anne's big eyes rolling with tears. "Why are you so moved?" "I'm doing it for myself. Didn't you hear? I'm using you, idiot." Li Qingshan rubbed her little head. Little Anne wiped away her tears and took out a glistening pill from her 100 treasures pouch, passing it to Li Qingshan. This was a Buddhist pill the One Thought Master had given to Little Anne. Judging from its glow, it was not as good as a pill like the virtue accumulation pill, but it was not too far off. Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. "I'm just saying. You better keep it for yourself." Little Anne insisted. She seemed like she was going to cry if he did not accept it. Li Qingshan rubbed his nose. All he could do was accept it. He felt strange, so he dismissed these thoughts. "Let's go. I'll take you somewhere nice." In the depths of the courtyard in the pavilion above the lake, the rocking chair swayed gently. Li Qingshan held her in his arms, smelling the faint fragrance of sandalwood on her. He stroked her silky hair gently as he gazed at the lake. Her eyes were closed. She seemed to be asleep. "I'm doing it for myself." He was not lying. He did not just have the noble thought of taking care of her and protecting her. With her by his side, he was finally no longer alone. Chapter 296. On the Dragon Snake Lake, a flying shuttle glided across the water surface and arrived outside Cloud Wisp Island. The leader was a muscular man with a full beard. On his left was a young man with a dark complexion, and on his right was a tall young man with bulging eyes. They were all wearing navy blue clothes, and the word "MO" was engraved on their waist tags. They were the 3 people who had entered the zombie cave with Li Qingshan in the past and killed the zombie Taoist. Hao Pingyang put away the flying shuttle and sized up the quiet Cloud Wisp Island that seemed to be deserted. He frowned and asked, "Did you hear me wrong? You really joined the School of Novels?" Zhang Lanqing said, "That's right, it's here. He's already famous in the 100 schools of thought." He Yisher said, "He's a famous fool, isn't he? He actually dares to insult the Taoist family head. He must be tired of living." Hao Pingyang glared at him. Zhang Lanqing hurriedly said, "Yisher, how can you say that? Qingshan saved us in the past." He Yisher said with bulging eyes, "He's just using us to complete the mission. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have gone underground and Jin Yuan and Jin Bao wouldn't have died." "Then what are you still doing here? Why don't you scram?" Hao Pingyang roared. Ever since he came back from the zombie cave, he felt that He Yisher was a despicable person and had distanced himself from him. This time it was Zhang Lanqing who persuaded him. Remembering that the 3 of them had gone on an adventure together in the past, it was just now that Zhang Lanqing called him along. He Yisher tilted his head and didn't say a word, but his face was filled with stubbornness. Hao Pingyang coldly snorted and strode forward. Zhang Lanqing sighed and followed. Yisher also moved his feet. He wasn't here to thank Li Qingshan for saving his life. Instead, he was here to see Li Qingshan's miserable state. The School of Novels was really a joke. "Qingshan! Qingshan!" The familiar roar traveled through the bamboo forest and into Li Qingshan's ears through his jinchi. When Li Qingshan walked out of the courtyard, Hao Pingyang was walking out of the bamboo forest. When he saw Li Qingshan, he was pleasantly surprised. He quickly walked over and patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. He said happily, "You really are here." Li Qingshan said, "Brother Hao, long time no see." And Zhang Ef equals. Book C Pavilion Web Brother He. The 6th layer of Qi refining? How did you train? It hasn't even been a year. Hao Pingyang's current cultivation level was the same as before, still in the 6th layer of Qi refining. The last 4 meridians of the 8 extraordinary meridians were already extremely slow and difficult to cultivate. When he heard that Li Qingshan had gone to the School of Novels on Cloud Wisp Island, he rushed over to look for him. However, he did not know that Li Qingshan was already in the 6th layer of the aura refining realm. Zhang Lanqing was also surprised. Just like before, he was still in the 5th layer of Qi refinement and was preparing to condense his sea of Qi to break through to the 6th layer. Li Qingshan's cultivation speed. It was astonishingly fast. The one who was most shocked was He Yisher. After returning from the zombie cave, he had made another breakthrough in his cultivation, reaching the 5th level of Qi refining. When he came to see Li Qingshan, he was full of confidence. He was prepared to look down on him and admire his downtrodden appearance to find some balance. Who would have thought that the insignificant second-level Qi practitioner would break through to the fourth level in less than a year? Now that he had reached the sixth layer, he found it increasingly difficult to find balance in his heart. Hao Pingyang turned around and saw Little N standing quietly under the eaves. He also had a deep impression of this beautiful child. Isn't this Little N? Were his eyes playing tricks on him? How did Little N also become a sixth-layer Qi refining? Zhang Lanqing said, "Senior apprentice brother, you were busy making cannons in the workshop. Didn't you hear about this? Little N is a heavenly meridian's prodigy. She reached the third layer in 4 hours. During the attribute test, she even attracted the attention of the heads of the various families. But now she's only in the sixth layer. Could the rumors be wrong?" Li Qingshan briefly explained what had happened. Hao Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing did not know what to say. She cultivated the first layer of the Vajra demon subduing art in one night and defeated the top disciple of the school of Buddhism, enlightenment. If these words had not come from Li Qingshan, they would not have believed it. They looked at Little N in surprise and saw that there was indeed a token of the top disciple of the school of Buddhism hanging on her waist. Hao Pingyang grinned and said, "I seem to have met an extraordinary person. Should I greet her?" When ordinary disciples saw the top disciples of the various families, they had to greet them and call them senior apprentice brother, let alone a major family like the school of Buddhism. In Zhang Lanqing's memory, the top disciple of the school of Buddhism, monk enlightenment, was an extremely arrogant person. He really could not connect the top disciple of the school of Buddhism with Little N. Li Qingshan said, "Brother Hao, you must be joking. Don't just stand here. Please come in." When they arrived at the hall, they invited the three to take a seat. Little N went to find a tea set and served them tea. The three hurriedly stood up and took it. Hao Pingyang did not care about trifles, so he did not mind, but Zhang Lanqing and He Yisher felt flattered. On the other hand, Li Qingshan was calm. After Little N served the tea, she sat beside him obediently, just like before. Yisher was depressed. Be it Li Qingshan or Little N, they had both reached a much higher realm than him. Jealousy rose in his heart. The heavens were so unfair. He had cultivated for so many years, but he could not compare to Li Qingshan in a year or Little N in a day and a night. After a while, Zhang Lanqing could not help but sigh. The school of Buddhism is fine. It's a good place to go. Qingshan, with your talent, it's a pity to enter the school of novels. Li Qingshan sipped his tea and said nonchalantly, "There's nothing bad about the school of novels." Hao Pingyang said loudly, "That's right. What's bad about it? The environment here is perfect for cultivation. Do you have to learn the techniques of the school of novels just because you want to enter? With your talent, Qingshan, you will definitely reach foundation establishment in the future. You can find any good cultivation technique then." What Brother Hao says makes sense. Li Qingshan smiled. Hao Pingyang seemed crude, but he was actually very meticulous. If you spend all your time on women, can you still be considered a qualified cultivator? Hao Pingyang said, "The path of cultivation is long. If you walk alone, won't you be lonely? If you have a cultivation partner, you'll be in a good mood. Perhaps you'll be able to go further. There are quite a few partners like that in the 100 schools of thought, such as the one beside you." Li Qingshan looked at Zhang Lanqing in surprise. He had never thought he would have a partner too. Zhang Lanqing's dark face blushed slightly in embarrassment. Hao Pingyang said, "When we go out for fun, this guy never follows us. That's what I like about him. Honest people don't lose out." "Brother Hao, don't you have one?" Li Qingshan asked with a smile. Temperament was also suitable for men. Hao Pingyang was not exactly handsome, but he was forthright and generous, which made him extraordinarily charming. Zhang Lanqing immediately said, "Originally there were people who took a liking to senior brother, but he spends most of his free time in the workshop. As soon as he leaves the academy, he spends his time drinking. Who can stand it?" Hao Pingyang laughed aloud. "I'm too busy with my own matters, so how can I be in the mood to deal with them? Then why are you still trying to persuade me?" Li Qingshan broke into laughter. The 100 schools of thought was rather similar to the universities of his past life. It was free and open, but it was even more so. Here it was fine even if you were unwilling to attend a single lesson. As long as you let the leader of the school know, no one would care if you wanted to travel for a few months. You just had to hand in spiritual stones every year. As for the disciples of the 100 schools of thought, they were not like the university students from his past life either. They were true prodigies. Chapter 297. Hao Pingyang said, "Even if I don't have the intention, listening to their music is a rare pleasure. Book C Pavilion Net. Of course I won't miss this opportunity. There's a chance it might really be as you say. Li Qingshan licked his lips. The two men looked at each other and smiled. Zhang Lanqing said, "Don't say any more. There are children here. Hurry up and choose your courses. Have you decided on your cultivation method?" Li Qingshan nodded. "Yes, the Gui water condensation method. I won't change it." "That's good. Do you have any hobbies? Talismans, formations, or alchemy? Which one do you want to learn?" "I want to learn about all of them. Brother Zhang, do you have any recommendations?" Li Qingshan saw that there were over a dozen courses related to alchemy on the list. The names and professors of each course were different. He had no idea how he should choose. Hao Pingyang said, "You've asked the right person. Lanqing has attended almost all of these courses. He's famous for his diligence." Zhang Lanqing smiled modestly. "I'm also an amateur, but I should learn about them all. Although it's an outer path, it's good for cultivation. But I can't be too distracted. It's best to focus on one at most two. If there's too many it won't be good. If it's possible, I'd like to learn all of them. But I'm not in a hurry. Right now, I want to focus on alchemy. Formations and alchemy will be supplementary." Li Qingshan smiled. He had a long journey ahead of him. Naturally, he had to make ample preparations. Zhang Lanqing agreed. Alchemy is indeed the best. Almost all the schools have alchemy classes. There are different levels and emphasis on different things. But the best are still the professors from the School of Taoism and the School of Medicine. "Qingshan, do you have any foundation?" Li Qingshan said honestly, "I've only learned how to make a batch of qi-gathering pills from someone, and the results were average." Zhang Lanqing said, "Then it seems that we should start from the basics. It just so happens that the academy entrance examinations have just ended, and there are many new classes like this." Then Zhang Lanqing recommended a few courses related to alchemy to Li Qingshan, explaining the pros and cons of each course in detail, including which professor was impatient and taught extremely fast. If one's brain was slow, it would be easy for them to keep up. Which professor was slow and liked to drag things out? In the end, he decided on a course for the School of Medicine called Basic Alchemy Techniques. There would be a course every few days for several months. This was exactly what Li Qingshan wanted. He had just fallen out with the head of the Taoist school. If he were to attend the lecture now, even if the sloppy Taoist could tolerate him, his disciples would probably cause trouble for him. He just wanted to cultivate in peace in the 100 schools of thought and improve his cultivation. He didn't want to compete with others. Then Zhang Lanqing helped Li Qingshan choose a few courses related to talismans, formations, and forging artifacts. He gave Li Qingshan a simple understanding of the history and general knowledge of these subjects before deciding on his interests and direction. Among them, Hao Pingyang specially recommended an artifact forging course from the School of Moism. He said he would take Li Qingshan to visit the Divine Mechanism Island of the School of Moism when the time came. After choosing these core subjects, Li Qingshan discovered that he still had plenty of time. He could choose a few subjects that he was interested in to fill up his time, such as going to the School of Music to listen to some tunes. "Apart from that, is there anything else I need to take note of?" Zhang Lanqing said, "Then there's choosing missions." "Missions?" Hao Pingyang said, "When we went to kill the zombie Taoist last time, it was a mission. After we returned, we received quite a lot of spiritual stones as a reward. As it turned out, the disciples had to find their own way around basic necessities in the 100 schools of thought. Apart from a few outstanding disciples, they had to find their own way around pills for cultivation. It was not as easy as it was in sections. However, they would not order their disciples around like sects either, forcing them to do this and that. Instead, it would be like the Hawkwolf Guard, where they would directly set a price. If they were willing to do it, they could earn spiritual stones and pills. I don't really lack spiritual stones and pills right now. Li Qingshan had only used up a small portion of the resources he had obtained underground. There was no need for him to waste his time on this. Zhang Lanqing shook his head. These missions are closely related to your cultivation. It's not just for earning spiritual stones. Book C Pavilion Web, what do you mean? For example, the most common alchemy missions. You can accept them as long as you know how to refine qi-gathering pills. The academy will prepare the materials for you, and all you need to do is hand over a certain number of qi-gathering pills within a certain amount of time, and you'll complete the mission. I see. Li Qingshan immediately understood that if he was skilled at alchemy, he could earn some extra pills from these missions. However, if he was bad at alchemy, he would have to work for nothing and he might even lose spiritual stones. As a new alchemist, the chances of him losing money were clearly quite high. However, even if he lost money, he could still accumulate a tremendous amount of experience in alchemy rapidly. Otherwise, just gathering the random spiritual herbs would take quite a lot of effort. He could not help but admire the minds of the people who set up these missions. Their methods of exploitation were just too brilliant. Zhang Lanqing said, "Another example would be the mission we did last time. It basically provided you with actual battle experience. There are also some missions that test your technique. You should familiarize yourself with the academy first. You can visit the Secretariat Hall on Contention Island when the time comes." The three of them chatted and laughed. Time passed extremely quickly. Before they knew it, the sun had already risen to the middle of the sky. Yisher said nothing. He sat to one side, glancing at Li Qingshan from time to time. Who knew what he was thinking? Suddenly, Li Qingshan stopped talking and gazed at the bamboo forest outside the courtyard. Originally, he thought Lu Chuanfeng had returned, but all he saw was a handsome man in black clothes emerging from the bamboo forest and making his way towards the courtyard. Hao Pingyang became stern. It was another primary disciple. He was the primary disciple of the school of legalism, Wasangzan. Why's he here? How can I accept this? Hao Pingyang said, "Since I'm giving it to you, just accept it. What about mine?" Li Qingshan said, "It's not like you're condensing your sea of qi. I'll treat you to a drink in the future." Haha, you must be joking. If I say it's my treat, then it's my treat. Zhang Lanqing expressed his gratitude sincerely. Right now he needed a sea of qi pill the most. With this sea of qi pill, he would have a 30% more confidence in condensing his sea of qi. It was truly a timely help. Yisher watched from the side with envy. He was also in the 5th layer of the qi refining realm, so how could he not want the sea of qi pill? Unfortunately, Li Qingshan did not even spare him a glance. After the few of them left, Wasangzan asked, "That tall and thin person just now was he Yisher, right?" Li Qingshan asked, "How did you know?" "I'll tell you later." It was impossible for Wasangzan to personally inquire about such a trivial matter. However, he knew that among the Mo disciples Li Qingshan knew, there was a person named He Yisher, who harbored ill intentions towards him. Wasangzan could guess who He Yisher was just by looking at the three of them. Li Qingshan said, "So mysterious." At this moment, a few women suddenly appeared out of thin air in the courtyard. Every one of them was a first-class beauty with exquisite features and excellent figures. They took out the food and wine from the lunch boxes and placed them on the table. Their clothes were also very revealing. As they moved, they would occasionally reveal their naked bodies. Chapter 298. They're all small pats. Book C Pavilion. Lu Chuanfeng didn't seem to realize it at all. Instead he spoke proudly. He even glanced at Li Qingshan, and when he saw the latter's surprised expression, he became even more delighted. His goal was to lead Li Qingshan onto the path of no return to the school of novels. Li Qingshan was indeed sizing up the women. Their voluptuous breasts and buttocks indeed had the ability to attract the attention of every man. However, that wasn't all he was looking at. Although the women all had smiles on their faces, their eyes were dull and lifeless. They were like those computer-generated beauties on game posters from his previous life, or some sort of exquisite blow-up doll. Of course, this was much more realistic. They were probably like the characters in Lu Chuanfeng's erotic novels. Who knew, they might even perform well in bed. But what use was that? He might as well find a brothel and have a good time. At least, it would be with a living person. Li Qingshan felt a deep sense of sorrow. No wonder the school of novels was looked down upon so much. He was always using the school of novels to do such lowly things. It was so despicable that even he, the first seat of the school of novels, wanted to give him a few punches, not to mention that little N was watching curiously from the side. Li Qingshan said in a low voice, "Lu Chuanfeng, you'd better stop before you go too far." Lu Chuanfeng was also annoyed. How dare he be so rude to him in front of an outsider? Did he really think that he was a fake clan head? However, when he met Li Qingshan's furious eyes, he immediately recalled the slap that was as sharp as a knife this morning. His puffed-up chest shrank back and he said embarrassedly, "We're all scholars. Can't we just talk things out? Look at you. You've made Commander Hua laugh at you. Hurry up and eat." Li Qingshan was used to seeing people fall out with each other over the slightest disagreement, so when he saw Lu Chuanfeng acting like this, he felt very uncomfortable, as if he had done something wrong. He was a person who bullied the strong, not the weak. A 10th layer Qi practitioner like Lu Chuanfeng was probably hard to find under the heavens. Wasangzan shook his head. It was rare for a dignified family head to end up like this. Coincidentally, Sun Fubai walked in from outside the door. When he saw the illusory women, he frowned. Junior brother, what are you doing? Lu Chuanfeng opened his mouth. What nonsense. Hurry up and retract your spell. Sun Fubai's snow-white eyebrows were almost knitted together. This junior brother of his could be considered a talent in cultivation. It was already not easy for him to reach the 10th layer of the Qi practitioner when the school of novels was in such a decline. However, sometimes his brain was not very sharp and he did not know how to pay attention to the situation when he spoke or did things. Lu Chuanfeng quickly dispersed the illusory women. With a clatter, the bowls and chopsticks in their hands fell to the ground. He quickly picked them up and conjured a stream of water to wash them clean. He placed the bowls and chopsticks on the table, frowning and pursing his lips like a wife who had been wronged. Hua Sengzan cupped his hands and said, "Elder son, long time no see." There was a hint of friendliness and sincerity in his tone. "What elder son? Just call me Uncle Fu." Sun Fubai grabbed Li Qingshan's hand. "Young man, we meet again. I didn't expect you to really come here." "I didn't expect you to be from the school of novels either, Uncle Fu." Li Qingshan seemed to be implying something. This old man's plans were really deep. Sun Fubai said, "Sai, you've seen the situation. The school of novels is currently in a bit of a slump. You won't blame me for asking you to fill in these 3 words, right?" Li Qingshan said, "Of course not. If it weren't for you, Uncle Fu, I'm afraid I would have nowhere to go now. Although this place is a bit down, it's quiet and suitable for cultivation." "Let's eat," Lu Chuanfeng said softly. Sun Fubai raised his hand and said, "Please." At the banquet there was a round of toasting and toasting. Although Little and didn't say anything and Lu Chuanfeng couldn't say anything, Hua Sengzan and Sun Fubai were present, so there was no awkward silence. With the beautiful scenery of the bamboo forest in front of them, it could be said that both the host and the guest were enjoying themselves. In the afternoon, Li Qingshan followed Hua Sengzan to the shore of Dragon Snake Lake. There was a vast expanse of mist that stretched as far as the eye could see. Hua Sengzan organized his words and tactfully informed Li Qingshan. Wang Puxi's warning was so tactful that if Li Qingshan didn't listen carefully, he would think that Wang Puxi was encouraging him. Li Qingshan said, "Even if he didn't say it, I wouldn't have wasted my time doing this. By the way, what's up with Heisher?" Hua Sengzan explained the whole story and how Heisher hinted that Li Qingshan was the murderer during his questioning. Li Qingshan was furious when he heard that. "What a scoundrel. I've saved his life time and time again, but not only is he not grateful, he even dares to accuse me. No wonder he doesn't dare to talk to me just now. He wasn't a magnanimous person. It wasn't in his character to not take revenge. He had to find an opportunity to teach Heisher a lesson to vent his anger." Hua Sengzan reminded him, "In the 100 schools of thought you can't use weapons. If you kill someone here, no one can protect you." Li Qingshan said, "Just put a bag over his head and beat him up to vent your anger. Do it cleanly and don't leave any evidence," Hua Sengzan said with a smile. Li Qingshan smiled as well. That doesn't sound like something a disciple of legalism should say. "Li Qingshan, as the Scarlet Wolf commander of the Clear River Prefecture, I'm informing you that you've been arrested. Prepare to be punished." Hua Sengzan became stern before suddenly breaking into a smile. "Does that sound like it?" His expression changed constantly, like when the ice on a lake cracked and the gentle spring water surged over. Before he knew it, the ice had melted and turned into gentle ripples. Li Qingshan could not help but think of a saying he had read in his past life. There are no girls in the world who can resist a smile from Jiang Feng, and there are no heroes who can resist a gentle strike from Yan Nantian. Hua Sengzan possessed the legendary bearing of Jiang Feng. Looking at himself, he could probably only develop towards someone with strength like Yan Nantian. "Tiske, there probably aren't a lot of women in the world who can resist your charm. It's no wonder that Sect Master Chiu is so infatuated with you." Hua Sengzan smiled. "We're just friends?" Li Qingshan said, "It doesn't matter whether we're friends or not. If she's interested in me, I definitely won't turn her down." Hua Sengzan said, "If there's no love between us, then even if we rely on each other, it'll only add to our loneliness." Li Qingshan said, "I think you have nothing better to do." Hua Sengzan smiled. "You can say that." There was nothing Li Qingshan could do about how unruffled he was. He thought of something and teased, "Though you're willing to offend your friends to help me. Don't tell me you have some sort of special hobby?" Hua Sengzan said extremely seriously, "You overestimate yourself." Li Qingshan sniggered and studied him. "It's not like I can't make do." Hua Sengzan couldn't take it either. "Someone asked me to take care of you." Li Qingshan said, "You're finally telling the truth. It's Gu Yenying, isn't it?" Suddenly hearing someone directly refer to her by her name, Hua Qingzan was slightly taken aback. As a matter of fact, he even became rather annoyed. However, with his great self-restraint, he did not show it. He only asked, "How did you know?" Li Qingshan said, "Even though I'm not the smartest, I'm at least average smart. The person who asked you to take care of me is definitely not Boss Wang. He hates me more than enough. The commander hates me, but you want to take care of me. This means that the person's status is even higher. Even Boss Wang has to listen to him. I've only seen such an important person, Gu Yenying." Hua Sengzan said, "A smart person. Your analysis isn't bad." Li Qingshan said excitedly, "Moreover, I dare say that you're interested in her." "Oh, why is that?" Li Qingshan said, "To be able to remain unperturbed by a peerless beauty like Clan Master Chiu and not be interested in men, it only means that you love someone else. I've only seen one woman who can surpass Clan Master Chiu in terms of charm. I believe that Commander Gu wouldn't treat me, Li Qingshan, as someone important. Asking you to take care of me was probably just a casual request. Just a casual request, and you're willing to offend your best friend to protect me. This isn't just loyalty to a superior." Hua Sengzan said, "You're too humble. You're not just ordinarily smart but extremely smart." Li Qingshan said, "Then you really shouldn't be taking care of me." "What?" Li Qingshan grinned. "Because we're rivals in love." Even Hua Sengzan was stunned for a while before bursting into laughter. He laughed so hard that he held his knees. "You're good, Li Qingshan. I haven't laughed so freely in a long time. Rival in love. Ha, this is so interesting." Li Qingshan smiled at him. He was as firm as a rock that was dug out from a ravine. He was obviously not joking. Hua Sengzan also stopped smiling, but the smile on his face did not disappear. "Then do you know what we look like?" "Like what?" "Like two ants fighting over a mountain." "Hey, go away. This is my territory. I can't even move a stone." Li Qingshan said, "Even if you're an ant, as long as you climb hard, you'll reach the top of the mountain one day." "Climb? Do you know? Mountains are constantly getting taller. You've only climbed a small step and it's 10 times taller. Wake up." Li Qingshan said confidently, "You underestimate me." Hua Sengzan said, "All right, then I'll definitely take care of you. Let's see how long you can climb." Li Qingshan was surprised. "Of course I'll climb until I die. Don't tell me that you're going to pursue a woman as your whole life?" He set a distant goal for himself and worked hard to achieve it. However, he did not regard these goals as the ultimate meaning of his life. It did not matter whether it was Gu Yenying or going to the ninth heaven. If he was killed halfway through his efforts, he could only shrug his shoulders and apologize to Brother Bull. This was the mark left behind in his previous life, and it was also a profound experience in this life. The hunger and cold in the cowshed made the cowherd boy only want to wear cotton clothes and eat meat. To this day, his goal was only equivalent to a bigger cotton shirt and a more delicious meat. He knew better than anyone else how precious these two things were. The warmth of cotton clothes could warm one's heart, and the taste of meat was better than all elixirs. However, they were not sacred, and they could be obtained with a pair of hands. "I have nothing better to do, but you won't understand this feeling." Hua Sengzan smiled. He was eager to see the effects of Little and practicing this secret technique of the school of Yin Yang. Li Qingshan said, "Little and is a disciple of Buddhism after all. This probably isn't something we can decide." Ma Bai said, "I've already discussed it with the One Thought Master. He's agreed." "Don't the two clash?" Li Qingshan was rather surprised. He never thought the One Thought Master would be so generous, willing to let his primary disciple spend time and effort on another cultivation technique. "You have no idea. There are many differences between ancient cultivation techniques and modern cultivation techniques. In particular, they are completely different from Buddhist cultivation methods, so they don't clash with the Guardian King's demon-subduing technique. But his cultivation speed will definitely slow down." Li Qingshan immediately saw the crux of the issue. This was also the reason why the One Thought Master agreed to Ma Bai's request. Little Ant's cultivation speed was just far too fast, which made him rather fearful for some reason. He obviously did not understand the great wishes made in the path of white bone and great beauty. This was just the instinct of a monk. "That's right, but I think it's worth it. As a Heavenly Meridian's prodigy, Little and might be able to progress smoothly as a Qi practitioner without any obstructions. But once he reaches foundation establishment, this advantage will no longer exist. Every single step further up becomes even more difficult, so his foundation will become especially important. Why don't he use this period of advantage to make his foundation even more stable? Li Qingshan found it reasonable. He asked Little Anne, "What do you think?" Little Anne lowered her head in thought for a while like an adult. She glanced at Li Qingshan and nodded in agreement. Seeing how Little Anne had agreed, Ma Bai smiled. He was a clever person. Looking at the situation, he thought, this Li Qingshan really is extremely important to her. Does she want to slow down her cultivation speed and wait for him? However, Little Anne's intentions were not what Ma Bai thought. It was different from what the One Thought Master and the other school leaders had predicted. As a matter of fact, it was the complete opposite. She was worried about being separated from him, but she was also afraid that she would be the one to fall behind. In the past, Oxen had once told her that his path would be extremely treacherous. She would have to do everything she could to keep up with his footsteps. If she felt like she couldn't persevere, then she should give up on the path of white bone and great beauty. How could she give up on it? Whether it was the Guardian King scripture of demon subdual or the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots, they were like rocks to mountains compared to the path of white bone and great beauty. Her cultivation speed was actually not particularly fast. Compared to Li Qingshan, who had transformed into a demon, her cultivation still paled slightly in comparison. This was because the path of white bone and great beauty was just far too profound. Even with her talent for comprehension, every single step forward was extremely difficult for her. However, she used the path of white bone and great beauty as a foundation and assumed the appearance of a mortal, which was why she was able to achieve the miracle of reaching the 6th layer in a single day and night. This body condensed from the path of white bone and great beauty might be an astonishing heavenly meridian's prodigy in other people's mouths, but to her, it was just an illusion, a reflection of the moon in the water. Compared to Li Qingshan, who practiced both the human and demon paths, she seemed like she had 2 faces, but she actually only had a single path, which was the path of white bone and great beauty. Obviously, she could cast aside this path. She only practiced the Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual. With the budding effects of this ability, she could cultivate it to foundation establishment. It wouldn't be difficult for him to go even higher. However, the requirements of the path of white bone and great beauty did not just lie in talent and comprehension, but also in willpower and mental fortitude. Once the pursuit of the appearance of vermilion, it would surpass the importance of the nature of white bone and the Buddhist Dharma. It would surpass the cultivation method itself. By then, if she wanted to turn back and practice this technique, the difficulty of her cultivation would increase greatly. At the very least, in this world, no one could overcome this obstacle. Even with Little Anne's talent for comprehension, she would not be able to reopen this closed door. She still had to accompany Li Qingshan to go beyond the 9 heavens. How could she give up on a great mountain for a pebble? On the Ice Sword Cliff, she had personally witnessed the instant Oxen struck. The shock she felt was no less than Li Qingshan's. If Oxen wished for the day when Li Qingshan could stand shoulder to shoulder with him, then what right did she have to follow by his side? The Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual or the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots? What a joke. The path of white bone and great beauty was her only choice. As a result, even without Ma Bai, she would still slow down her cultivation speed. This just happened to provide her with a decent excuse. Moreover, observing the pebble could aid her in comprehending the great mountain. She was rather interested in the divination techniques of ancient cultivators, because such a technique existed in the path of white bone and great beauty. However, her current cultivation was too low, so she could not come into contact with it. Right now, she could only start with the basics and understand it in advance so that she could make some preparations for the future. Ma Bai said, "This is not the place to pass on techniques. Come with me to Bogu Island." Little Anne glanced at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan smiled and said, "Go. Cultivate well with Patriarch Ma. I happen to be meditating in the afternoon." After sending off Little Anne, Li Qingshan was just about to return to his room to take medicine and cultivate. However, Lu Chuanfeng suddenly stood up. I have a good place for cultivation here." Lu Chuanfeng took Li Qingshan into the depths of the courtyard. There was an empty space basically in the center of the huge courtyard. The surroundings were originally sealed off, so Li Qingshan had not discovered it in the morning. The formation engraved on the empty space was very similar to the spirit gathering formation Li Qingshan had seen in the secluded cultivation room in the Hawkwolf Guard in the past, but it was much larger and more complicated. Moreover, the grooves on it had all been filled with spiritual stones, and they did not seem like regular inferior spiritual stones. As soon as Li Qingshan extended his hand, he was blocked by a great force. He was unable to take a single step closer to the formation. He could sense that even if he demonified, he would not be able to break through this force. Lu Chuanfeng took out his waist tablet as the leader of the school of novels. The design of the waist tablet was different from that of regular disciples. It was extremely intricate. Half of it was a rising and falling cloud, while the cloud transformed into various figures, plants, birds, and beasts. Every single one of them was as thin as a mustard seed, yet they were also extremely detailed. Lu Chuanfeng raised the tablet, and the formation flashed slightly. With a hum, it seemed like some mechanism had been activated. Lu Chuanfeng indicated to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan walked towards the formation. This time there were no more obstructions. As soon as he entered the formation, Li Qingshan sensed an extremely pure and tremendous power. It was much more powerful than what he felt in the secluded cultivation room in the Hawkwolf Guard. And he could sense that the formation was not just for gathering the spiritual qi of the world. Instead, it was connected to an even larger and more complicated system. Li Qingshan had a good feeling about it. That was the massive formation that enveloped the entire 100 schools of thought. The formation on Cloud Wisp Island was one of the crucial points of the formation. The Lake of Dragons and Snakes had always been a rare blessed land for it to be chosen as the base of the 100 schools of thought, and the paths chosen by the 10 schools of thought were blessed lands among blessed lands. The various islands were connected by underground spiritual veins, and the places they had chosen to construct formations were the crucial points of the spiritual veins. Through the gathering of the formations, the spiritual qi had reached an unbelievable density. It was a rare holy land for cultivation, but only the leaders of the schools had the right to cultivate here. Even primary disciples did not have that right. However, the school of novels had already declined to such a state, so the various rules were basically useless. Lu Chuanfeng had also witnessed Li Qingshan's wealth, so he was unable to think of anything else that could interest him. Being in the formation, Li Qingshan increasingly felt the importance of the word earth in wealth, companionship, method, and location. Cultivating here, even if qi practitioners could not absorb the spiritual qi of the world, the effects would still be 10 times stronger than cultivating outside. Moreover, he could absorb the spiritual qi of the world, and his qi refinement would experience a qualitative improvement. Although he could not completely understand the value of the formation, he knew that according to the rules of the 100 schools of thought, using any facilities would require a fee of spirit stones. Just as he was about to ask, Lu Chuanfeng said, "Cultivate well." He turned around and left. Chapter 300. Book C Pavilion. When Li Qingshan awoke from his meditative state, the moon was already high in the sky. Its silvery radiance was like a wash, illuminating the earth. Rows upon rows of bamboo buildings were cut by the moonlight into a crisscrossing scene of light and shadow. On the ground there was also a pillar of light that shot up into the sky. He suddenly realized that he was in this pillar of light. It was the spiritual light gathered by the formation. The true qi in his sea of qi became more and more abundant. Under the suppression of the spirit turtle and the purification of the Sumeru ring, it was like a boundless, pure lake without any ripples. However, as long as he needed to, he could also raise a monstrous wave and destroy everything in front of him. Li Qingshan smiles. With the help of this magic formation, the Lianqi stage will not be an obstacle for him. He steps out of the magic formation and walks along the long corridor of light and shadow to his residence, a bamboo house facing the lake. I didn't even have time to tidy up after I made my choice this morning. He was going to stay in the 100 schools of thought for a long time, so he needed to tidy himself up. Light flickered in the bamboo basket and faint voices could be heard. Li Qingshan smiled and pushed the door open. Lu Chuanfeng and Sun Fubai, who were sitting across from each other, turned their heads together. Qingshan. Li Qingshan walked to the table, sat down cross-legged and calmly asked, "Have you decided?" "I've decided." Lu Chuanfeng's eyes were red as if he had been crying. Agreeing to what Li Qingshan said was equivalent to denying all his past efforts. It also meant that the characters he had created would leave him forever, never to appear in this world again. Although they were fake and lifeless, they had accompanied him through countless days and nights. If it weren't for Sun Fubai's advice, he wouldn't have been able to make such a decision in such a short time. Sun Fubai said, "We'll wait for daybreak. I'll order my men to recall and destroy those novels." Li Qingshan said, "That's not necessary. Let them fade naturally." Lu Chuanfeng's eyes widened. Li Qingshan said, "All I need is determination. I hate people who are unwilling to sacrifice anything and just want to sit still and wait for others to save them. Luckily you're not one of them." Lu Chuanfeng felt as if he had been saved from death's door. She grabbed Li Qingshan's hand and thanked him profusely. When he calmed down, Li Qingshan said, "Then let's begin. How do we start?" Lu Chuanfeng and Sun Fubai looked at each other. Li Qingshan shrugged. "Of course it's to teach me the techniques of the school of novels." You're willing to learn?" Lu Chuanfeng asked in disbelief. Li Qingshan's attitude was quite firm at the beginning. "Not necessarily. I have to understand it first, but I might learn it. I'm not a savior. I can't possibly not understand the school of novels." "I'll save the school of novels," Li Qingshan said matter-of-factly. His principle was to do it to the end. Lu Chuanfeng's face was full of excitement, but Sun Fubai's heart was filled with worry. Would it be possible to bring this decaying body back to life by injecting fresh and powerful blood into it? Or would it be a waste of this blood? But no matter what, the school of novels, which had stagnated for many years, began to move forward again. "Senior brother, tell me." Sun Fubai cleared his throat and began the lesson. The techniques of the school of novels weren't difficult to cultivate. They didn't even need to cultivate another technique. They only needed to use the Gui water condensation technique as the foundation. They only needed to condense a divine talisman in their body. Divine talismans were a type of spiritual talisman. But they were different from ordinary spiritual talismans. Spiritual talismans were documents of heaven and earth. Cultivators could use them to communicate with heaven and earth, but divine talismans could communicate with another special power. It was the power of faith that came from the hearts of living beings. Cultivators who possessed divine talismans would be able to live in the mortal world. Mortals believed that this was the characteristic of gods. The name of the divine talisman was the Talisman of Great Creation. In the distant past, an ancient cultivator had replicated the twisting form of the underground spirit vein. That was the embryonic form of the Talisman of Great Creation. The first step for a disciple of the school of novels was to condense this divine talisman. This wasn't difficult for Li Qingshan. He estimated that he would be able to do it in 10 days at most. The attribute of the water armor played a crucial role. But this was the simplest step for a disciple of the school of novels. Gathering the power of faith to strengthen this divine talisman was the most difficult step. It wasn't easy to write a novel that could become a legend. But in Li Qingshan's previous life, he had personally seen many people do it. He had personally witnessed the birth of many legendary characters. If the divine talisman of great creation existed in that world, they would definitely appear in this world alive. So what was he going to do now? Find one of the books and copy it? Seeing that Li Qingshan was willing to learn the methods of the school of novels and didn't need to destroy his own novel, Lu Chuanfeng regained his spirit and said proudly, "Although you look down on me, it's really not easy to write a novel. If you write it yourself, you might not even be able to compare to me." Li Qingshan agreed with him. He wasn't the type to sit down and write novels. Putting aside the fact that he couldn't remember so many words in his previous life, even if he could, would he be able to change everything? Those stories that were filled with modern tastes probably wouldn't fit the mindset of the people of this era. In the end, they would only be treated as the dreams of a madman. Even if he could really copy out a legendary novel, how many years would it take for it to accumulate? Even if he succeeded in the end, it would only be his problem. It wouldn't be considered as saving the school of novels. Sun Fubai had also thought of this problem. He sighed with some worry. "This isn't easy," Li Qingshan said confidently. "I think you guys are mistaken about the most important problem. What? Whether it's novels or divine talismans, they're all just opportunities. The most important thing is the medium." "What do you mean by medium?" This new term left Sun Fubai and Lu Chuanfeng rather confused. Li Qingshan explained slightly, "It's the so-called channel of dissemination. Even if you write a beautiful novel, it'll be pointless if no one reads it." Lu Chuanfeng said in disagreement, "If you think that's the problem, then you're underestimating us a little too much." Only then did Li Qingshan learn that Sun Fubai had an extremely large business in the mortal world. In the Clear River Prefecture, all of the major bookstores were under his name. All of them were under his name. As long as Lu Chuanfeng wrote them, no matter how unbearable the content was, the Mo family's printing press would be able to print them out in large quantities and place them in bookstores all over the country. Every single copy of the book was cheap and could even be given away for free. It was all useless. Li Qingshan smiled. "Is that all?" "What else?" Lu Chuanfeng said. Li Qingshan said, "I was born in a small mountain village. There wasn't a single bookstore there, and I haven't seen a single book in over a decade. You can count the number of literate people there with a single hand." "So what?" Lu Chuanfeng was at a loss. It was very normal for ignorant people from mountain villages to be illiterate. Those people looked down on even the scholars among the mortals, let alone the mighty Qi warriors. However, Sun Fubai seemed to understand something. Li Qingshan added, "You mentioned earlier that the officials of the school of Confucianism who watch over a region will condense a divine talisman in their bodies, right?" "Yeah. The divine talisman is called the Talisman of Great Virtue. It's actually the original talisman of virtue of the school of Taoism. Virtue was an extremely important term to ancient cultivators. The difficulty of cultivation was great, and demons and monsters posed a great threat. It forced them to use all the power they could. The two types of divine talismans used two completely different powers in people's hearts. One was faith and the other was gratitude. After ancient cultivators did good deeds, there would often be commoners willing to erect a longevity tablet and worship their benefactor day and night. Although the talisman of virtue couldn't turn fake into real like the talisman of great creation, it could turn illusion into reality. However, it had the effect of turning misfortune into fortune. In that chaotic era where demons roamed, luck was even more important than power. Cultivators often ran into a dog around a corner. You can tell it's a demon general at a glance. In such a predicament, it didn't matter what kind of genius you were. You could only end up as a snack. What? A foundation establishment cultivator? Did you think a demon commander wouldn't come out for a walk? There were also powerful mutants and terrifying demonic cultivators. The power of an individual was truly too insignificant. Even if one cultivated in seclusion for the rest of their lives, it was inevitable that disaster would come from the heavens just by sitting at home. Thus, learning divination and accumulating merit became essential subjects for cultivators. Being able to predict such a situation, or even having a bit more luck to avoid such a situation, became crucial. However, in this era there was no need to worry about such situations. Although cultivators still fought fiercely against each other, compared to demons, ghosts, mutants and demonic cultivators, they appeared extremely gentle and adorable. Spending effort on accumulating merit became somewhat of a loss. In the Confucian school, only the unworthy disciples would walk the path of an official. This caused many cultivators to sigh at the collapse of morality and the decline of human hearts. Sun Fubai said, "Qingshan, what do you mean?" Li Qingshan said, "What I mean is that you've all been mistaken about your own identities from the very beginning. What novelists pay attention to is not how to make up stories, but to be like the officials of the Confucian school, managing this 3,000 li of land and trying to make as many people as possible the disseminators of stories. You might think that those people are very foolish, but when have we ever needed wise people? Isn't it precisely because a bunch of fools came to believe in that monster that the monster became real? To tell the truth, I don't have any prejudice against the things you've written. I just don't like them, but what I don't like doesn't mean that everyone else doesn't like them. I believe that they don't have that high of a requirement for a story. In fact, compared to the poems and songs written by those great scholars, they'll even prefer the novels you've written. The audience of a scholarly novel will never be able to compare to that of a commoner." Lu Chuanfeng's eyes lit up. If he really reached that step, it wouldn't be difficult for him to break through to the foundation establishment realm. But then he said in distress, "But they can't read." Wuxia Pavilion. He couldn't possibly spend a few years teaching an old farmer how to read, could he? This is just the most long-term plan and strategy. If we can't teach old farmers how to read, why can't we teach children? We don't lack money, so we can set up hundreds or thousands of private schools and teach children to read for free. Sooner or later, they'll become the cornerstone of novelists. Sun Fubai was also stunned by Li Qingshan's plan. This kind of vision had completely exceeded their imagination. Even the Confucian school, which emphasized education without discrimination and blessings, wouldn't think of setting up a private school. It would be best if they didn't know how to read for the rest of their lives and live peacefully as ordinary people. But this plan seemed so reasonable. They had always been thinking about how to write moving novels, but they didn't think about how to cultivate readers, especially from these lowliest and ignorant children of farmers. Perhaps it was because he came from a mountain village that he could think of this. The idea of a private school was simply too good. They could even use novels as initiation reading material. Of course, they couldn't use the kind like Lu Chuanfeng's. So this was the reason why he was determined to have Lu Chuanfeng destroy those books. It was like a beacon of light had been lit up before them, and as they thought about it, the beacon of light became the sun very soon. Li Qingshan gave them time to digest it before continuing. If you look closer, it's not just words that can spread stories. In his era, there were still not a lot of people who were willing to sit down and read, but through various mediums more gods had been created in the past 20 years than in the past 2,000 years. Sun Fubai's train of thought had already been cleared up. You mean? We need storytellers, singers, actors, and everyone who can spread stories for us. Afterwards, we'll unite them and establish an association. We'll call it the Cloud Wisp Association. Li Qingshan extended his right hand and suddenly clenched it before swinging it. We'll have them travel to every corner of the Clear River Prefecture and tell the stories we've written. Chapter 301. In the tea house, an old man wearing an old robe stood in front of a table on a high platform. He was telling the story of Emperor Xingzu defeated the Western barbarians. Although it was an old story that everyone knew about, when it came out of his mouth, the customers in the tea house were mesmerized by it and forgot to eat the fruits on their plates. Sun Shuping was originally a scholar, but like most of his peers, he didn't make a name for himself. As the saying goes, 100 useless scholars are useless. Once there is no hope of becoming an official, those who do well will become an advisor to others. Those who don't do well will open a private school and become a teacher. Of course, there were those who ended up on the streets and became beggars. His life was neither good nor bad. Because of his ability to speak, he became the disciple of an old storyteller and became a storyteller. Because he was literate and well-read, his accomplishments in this field were even higher than his master's. Unknowingly, decades had passed and he could be considered to have made a name for himself. A string of ear-piercing bird cries rang out. Sun Shuping's mouth did not stop moving as he looked over with a frown. He saw a fat man covered in silk, carrying a bird cage as he walked into the courtyard. He casually squeezed his way to the front of the stage and sat down. The bird seemed to be frightened and its calls became even more shrill, causing everyone to glare angrily at it. However, they seemed to be afraid of the fat man's power and dared not say anything. Sun Shuping had no choice but to stop and smiled. "Sir, birds are not allowed in the tea house. May I trouble you to hang it outside?" The fat man rolled his eyes. "Hang it outside? Do you know how much my bird is worth? If I lose it, you'll pay for it? You tell your story and it calls its own. You guys compete and see who is better. Don't worry, I won't give you a single copper coin. I'll give you more than these poor people." Sun Shuping's frown deepened. He slammed the gavel and said, "So what if you foresee the future? Listen to the next chapter." He ended the book with an old saying that would not change for 1,000 years. He flicked his sleeves and left. In the tea house, cheers rang out, not only for the story but also for the integrity of the storyteller. Many copper coins were thrown onto the stage. His disciple, Little Shirtu, rushed onto the stage and picked up the coins while bowing to everyone like a little monkey, causing laughter. Ouch! Little Shirtu cried out in pain and fell to the ground. Blood flowed down from his forehead and a blood-stained silver horn fell onto the stage. Sun Shuping hurried over to help his disciple up. He pointed at the fatty and said angrily, "You! Tell me more. I have plenty of money." The fat man sneered and tossed a piece of silver in his hand. "If I support you, you're a character. If I don't support you, you're just a stupid storyteller. You dare to throw a tantrum with me? Do you know who I am? I'll smash you to death with money, you old thing." Book C Pavilion Net. A streak of golden light flew down from the upper floor and struck the fat man's head. It bounced off and landed on the stage. It was an ingot of gold. When he looked at the fatty again, he saw that his face was already covered in blood and he had directly fainted. "Mr. Sun, our shopkeeper invites you in." A strong man somehow flashed and appeared in front of Sun Shuping. When Little Shirtu saw the gold, he hurriedly covered his head and picked up the gold. He took a bite and exclaimed in surprise, "Master, it's really gold. It's such a big piece." His head immediately stopped hurting. He had never touched gold in his entire life. A child who grew up in a tile-roofed shop wasn't as precious as gold. Sun Shuping felt a bit sad. Storytelling was a lowly profession and anyone could scold it. He had experienced this many times, but he didn't want this child to suffer for the rest of his life. He decided to change his profession. As his mind ran wild, he followed the man to a private room on the second floor. He lifted the bamboo curtain and saw an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion sitting there. His clothes weren't particularly luxurious, but it was obvious that they were made of the best and most comfortable material. He didn't exude any arrogance but just sat there quietly, giving off an aura of a crane among a flock of chickens. Based on his many years of experience, he felt that this noble person in front of him didn't seem like someone who would come to this kind of place to listen to storytelling. It was more likely that he was a cultivator, so he didn't dare to slight him. He respectfully bowed and said, This junior is Sun Shuping. Thank you for your help. Sun Fubai looked up and down at this famous storyteller within a radius of 100 li. He nodded slightly in satisfaction and once again confirmed Li Qingshan's thoughts. If this storyteller spoke, even the most ordinary story would become much more vivid and interesting. Brother, have you heard of Cloud Wisp Society? No. Now you've heard of it. This isn't the place to talk. Come with me. Sun Fubai stood up and walked out the door. Little Shirtu was holding his head with one hand and holding the gold in the other as he stuck his head out of the door. But I only know how to tell stories. Sun Shuping was taken aback. He struggled to imagine why a noble person, who could casually toss around gold, a legendary cultivator, would look for a storyteller like him. Then that's enough. Sun Fubai rubbed Little Shirtu's head. There's plenty of gold. Little Shirtu immediately felt like his head no longer hurt, and his blood stopped flowing. After Sun Fubai left the 100 schools of thought, he immediately gathered the managers of the major bookstores and made an announcement to the various cities and districts of the Clear River Prefecture, recruiting people. At the same time, he personally visited the most famous storytellers and singers within the Clear River Prefecture. According to Li Qingshan's plan, these people's greatest use was not storytelling and singing, but as mentors who would pass on their experiences and become the core of the Cloud Wisp Society. At the same time, he found an estate in a corner of the prefectural city to serve as the headquarters of the Cloud Wisp Society. Under the impetus of absolute power and wealth, the Cloud Wisp Society that Li Qingshan envisioned was rapidly established. However, he still had no idea when it would be able to unleash its power and how much power it would be able to unleash. As Sun Fubai ran around, Li Qingshan arrived on the Divine Mechanism Island of the School of Moism, preparing to attend his first lesson after coming to the 100 schools of thought. Chapter 302. A mocking voice came from the crowd. Li Qingshan raised his eyebrows and looked back to see who dared to provoke him. Was it the Taoist disciple of that sloppy old Taoist? Or was it a Buddhist disciple who was dissatisfied with little Anne? All he saw was a young man in white dressed like a Confucian scholar with two beautiful girls beside him. Chem? A Confucian disciple. Who are you? Tell me your name. Chu Tian snorted. Don't pretend you don't know me. I am Chu Tian. Li Qingshan found him vaguely familiar. He suddenly remembered. Wasn't this the genius who had the 5 elements constitution during the attribute test? However, they had never interacted with each other before, so no matter how he looked at him, he was completely unaware that he had caused Chu Tian to lose 1,000 spirit stones. Even if he had known, he would have scolded him and said that he deserved it. Seeing that the other party had come with ill intentions, Chu Tian did not bother to be polite and said, I've always been too lazy to remember the names of small fries. Chu Tian's eyes widened in anger. No one had ever dared to look down on him like this since he was young. All right, Li Qingshan. This young master has come to humiliate you a little. If you just accept it obediently, then so be it. Making this young master happy is your blessing, yet you're still bold enough to jump up and talk back. You have no idea what kind of trouble you've caused. I see that you're a talent. Now, admit your mistake and call me boss and we'll be brothers. Li Qingshan was dumbfounded by what he heard. He never thought there would actually be such a weirdo in the world. Even his anger vanished. He frowned at Chu Tian before turning to Hao Pingyang. Is there something wrong with this person's head? Hao Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing were also shocked. They did not expect Chu Tian, one of the top 3 geniuses of the entrance exam, to have something wrong with his head. Li Qingshan was the chief disciple of the School of Novels. Although he had attracted a lot of disdain and hostility, those who came here were all new disciples, who would make enemies just for a moment of fun. That would be stupid. But this genius Chu Tian did not have such considerations. He said something that shocked even the onlookers. The young girl beside Chu Tian pouted coquettishly, How dare you say that about our big brother Tian? Do you know that our big brother Tian is? Before she could finish her sentence, Li Qingshan had already pulled Hao Pingyang away like he was hiding from a madman, which immediately made her face bright red. Chu Tian angrily said, Li Qingshan, stop right there. Are you afraid of this young master? If you're scared, then call me boss. Otherwise, I won't let you off. Li Qingshan said, There is only one person in my life who deserves me to call him Lauda. It looked like shit. Stay away from me. Don't think that I won't dare to step on you just because you're shit. The quarrel between the two had already attracted many onlookers. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd roared with laughter. Hao Pingyang laughed. What a wonderful metaphor. Hua Qinglu and Yu Zijian stood to one side as well. They had received guidance from a senior as well. Out of the various introductory courses for forging artifacts, this professor from the School of Moism taught them the best. Watching Lu smiled. Li Qingshan was still the same as when she first met him. He was extremely arrogant. Chu Tian never thought he would become a laughingstock instead. He was utterly furious. Just when he was about to lose his temper, someone called out, "The professor is here." The disciples all returned to their seats. Although Chu Tian was filled with hatred, he was not bold enough to start a fight in front of the professor. The 100 schools of thought seemed open and free, but they were not without rules. In fact, we don't even need a tripod. After the lecture, he picked up the wooden box that he had brought. There were many small square wooden blocks placed neatly in it. He let the disciples in the front row pass them to the back. Meng Shiqi asked them to turn it into a ball without destroying the wood grain as much as possible. The material of the wooden block was pine wood. It was relatively soft and easy to change its shape. If one wanted to learn refining weapons, he had to be able to use his own strength to change the shape of the material. Li Qingshan also got a pine wood block and immediately began to practice. He slowly injected his true qi into it and followed the method that Meng Shiqi taught him to let his true qi gradually fuse with the wooden block. With the extremely pure true qi and the gentle and easy to manipulate nature of the Gui water true qi, he succeeded in this step on the first time. When he began to change his true qi, the shape of the wooden block also twisted and changed a little. It was as though it was no longer wood. It also became water with the Gui water true qi. Chapter 303. Li Qingshan's confidence was boosted. After trying for a long time, he finally removed the 8 sharp corners of the pine wood block, but the wood grain was broken inch by inch. It was a complete mess. In a moment of panic, he couldn't help but inject more true qi into it, and the wood block immediately shattered with a bang. He then looked at Chen Rongji, who was beside him. She wasn't any better than him. Chen Rongji casually crushed the pine wood block and smiled. "Looks like none of us are geniuses." But it wasn't too bad. Li Qingshan believed that as long as he was a little more stable, the entire ball wouldn't be a problem. However, he still had to carefully experience how to maintain the pine wood grain. There were also many qi practitioners who tried for a long time but couldn't even achieve the first step of merging qi in objects. Naturally, they couldn't change the shape of the pine wood in the slightest. If they were too anxious, they would inevitably break the wood block. Meng Shiqi mocked, "If you can't even do this, it proves that you don't have talent in smithing. You don't have to listen anymore. Save yourself some time." Some qi practitioners were proud and arrogant. Moreover, this Professor Meng was only in the qi refinement realm. Some of them stood up and walked out. Then Meng Shiqi smiled and said, "Actually, I also failed in my first smithing." Everyone was stunned. Meng Shiqi said, "Arrogance is the biggest obstacle to learning. If you don't even have this bit of patience, you really don't need to learn smithing. Don't forget, hard work makes up for your shortcomings. Alright, raise your results for me to see." Many pine wood balls were raised. Of course, if they were too inferior, they would be too embarrassed to take them out. Meng Shiqi's gaze fell on Chu Tian's hand. The wood ball in his hand was perfectly round with clear grain. There was no break at all, as if it was carved from the wood block. "Fellow Taoist, please stand up. What's your name?" "Chu Tian." "Well done." Chu Tian proudly enjoyed everyone's admiring gazes. He thought, "Of course I'm a genius. Hard work makes up for my shortcomings." He didn't forget to look at Li Qingshan. Chen Rongji transmitted her voice, "I'll say it. Nowadays it's rare to see such an innocent and cute enemy." Li Qingshan smiled, but he didn't know if she understood. There was no break in between. Meng Shiqi only stopped speaking when the 4-hour lecture ended. He rubbed the back of his neck and stretched. He said, "We're already here today. I'm getting old. I feel tired after standing for a while." He twisted his neck, and with a sudden crack, his head fell off his shoulder and rolled off the podium. Scarlet blood gushed out like a small fountain. This warm classroom suddenly turned into a terrifying murder scene. The lecture hall was filled with cries of surprise. The female Confucian disciple, who had a look of disgust on her face towards Li Qingshan, shrieked. Chu Tian's expression changed. He didn't expect to witness a murder on his first day at the 100 schools of thought. Furthermore, with his cultivation, no one saw who did it. How did he do it? He instinctively released his protective jinqi. In the lecture hall, everyone was in danger. Meng Shiqi's body was still standing straight. The head on the ground said, I used too much strength." The headless body walked down from the podium. The headless body walked off the podium, picked up the head and put it back on his shoulder. The lecture hall was dead silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Qingshan sniggered. He never thought this professor from the school of Moism would have such a twisted sense of humor. If he used a puppet to teach, then so be it. Not only did he use a puppet to teach, he even used this trick in the end. He had long since noticed that the person teaching on the podium was not a living person at all. It was not a living person at all, but a puppet. Although it looked exactly like a human and gave off the aura of a chi practitioner, the smell it gave off was extremely strange. Drinking tea and coughing were all to create a false impression. It could fool most people, but it couldn't fool his sixth senses. The blood it spat out in the end was not human blood at all. However, it was really amazing that the school of Mo's puppet skills were so exquisite. This lesson must have left a deep impression on the new disciples of the school of Mo. Looking at Chen Rongji again, she looked normal. Although she didn't have six senses as sharp as his, he would be surprised if she couldn't see through it. For Chu Tian to be praised like this by a puppet, it was really hard for people to look up to him. Puppet Meng Shichi said, "Sharp and meticulous observation and calm and rational thinking are more important to the path of forging than turning a wooden block into a round one. The latter can be achieved by anyone with more practice. However, if one lacks the former, it will be hard for him to become a forging master." The atmosphere in the lecture hall relaxed, and laughter could be heard everywhere. Although they knew they were fooled, Meng Shichi, who was hiding somewhere, had won everyone's admiration. However, many female cultivators' faces were still pale. Chu Tian retracted his protective jinchi. His face was red. He felt that Meng Shichi's words were pointing at him on purpose. Puppet Meng Shichi used his hand to point out the disciples who had not shown any surprise just now. He asked them how they could tell he was a puppet. Li Qingshan did not believe the puppet possessed the ability to think, but it did possess the ability to judge, such as which ball was rounder and which people's expressions changed less. All of this should have followed some sort of procedure. Compared to battle, this was nothing difficult. The pair of eyes that were no different from a real person's should have been the key. When it was Li Qingshan's turn, Li Qingshan stood up. His mouth moved a few times, but he did not produce any sound. Afterwards he sat down. The puppet professor said extremely sincerely, "Thank you." Li Qingshan smiled. As it seemed, he was right. There was a roar of laughter. Watching Lu cheered inside. Just now she had finally gotten her revenge for being fooled. Apart from being bold, this guy really was smart. She could not help but think of that rainy night in Lakeside City, Grandma Shimon's roar, and how he clasped his hands in an extremely graceful manner in a dark alley in his straw cape. This blurry memory suddenly became clear. Even if a man like him had a bad luck in life and accidentally joined the school of novels, he would still be able to achieve something. After asking everyone, Puppet Meng Shichi bowed deeply. "Thank you for your suggestions." He pointed at his head. "I've already stored it here. I'll continue improving it when I get back. Just now, I'll give each disciple a box of pine wood as a reward." The disciples who saw through the puppet walked up to the platform one by one and received their boxes. "Practice more." Puppet Meng Shichi repeated this sentence. When it was Li Qingshan's turn, he wanted to accept the box, but the puppet professor grabbed it firmly. "I might be a puppet, but you can't fool me." Li Qingshan knew that the person talking to him was no longer the puppet before him. He smiled. "Yes, Professor." Puppet Meng Shichi released his hand and patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. "I've heard about you from Pingyang. Come often in the future." Li Qingshan put away his notebook and walked out of the tall conch-like building. It was already dusk. Before he knew it, an afternoon had passed. Holding the small wooden box, he felt extremely fulfilled. This was his first lesson, and he had finally taken another step forward. Hao Pingyang and Zhang Lanqing were waiting under a street lamp on the opposite side of the road. Yes, it was a street lamp. The long pole lit up a dim yellow light that illuminated a large part of the road. There were already small insects lingering under the light. Li Qingshan stopped right there. Li Qingshan was about to walk over when a shout came from behind him, attracting many people's attention. "I almost forgot about this person." Li Qingshan turned around and said to Chu Tian, "Boy, what do you want?" The Academy of the 100 Schools strictly forbade personal fights. The person who struck first would be punished even more severely, and it would not be enough if they just suffered some physical pain. They would still be able to play the hero in front of others. The punishment was actual spiritual stones. Li Qingshan had originally hoped for a stable environment like this, but now he was a bit unhappy. If they were in the wilderness, he would go up and pinch this boy to death. He wanted to see what other trump cards he had other than the 5 elements body and whether they were stronger than him. Chu Tian said, "I want to challenge you to a bet. Do you dare to accept?" Li Qingshan was pleasantly surprised. "There's such a good thing?" Chu Tian was startled by Li Qingshan's expression. His heart was beating like a drum, but he quickly calmed down. Li Qingshan was only in the 6th layer of Qi training. Even if he knew the body refining technique, there was nothing to be afraid of. Do you accept or not? Okay, what do you want to bet? Tell me. Martial arts, of course. Or do you want to see who's more of a good-for-nothing? In that case, I can't compare to you, haha. Chu Tian laughed a few times, but when he realized that no one responded, he stopped. Li Qingshan said, okay, no problem. Time, place, and wager. Chu Tian said, the place will naturally be the School of Military's Great War Island's Great Martial Arts Field. The wager will be 1,000 spiritual stones, no 2,000 spiritual stones. The time will be 3 months from now. He wanted nothing more than to teach Li Qingshan a lesson right now, but he couldn't help but feel uneasy. That was why he pushed it to 3 months from now. After he came to the Confucian school, he received the 5 elements palm personally taught by Lu Changqing, which allowed him to cultivate 5 kinds of true qi at the same time. 3 months was enough for him to achieve small success. At that time, not to mention the 6th layer of qi training, even the 9th or 10th layer would be no problem. On the other hand, Li Qingshan's progress in the School of Novels would definitely be slow. With this, there was no need for him to use something like that to have an absolute chance of victory. He could not help but feel slightly complacent over his intelligence, but he was also worried that Li Qingshan would not accept it. Alright then, 3 months from now. Li Qingshan agreed immediately. What he lacked the most right now was time. In 3 months, he would basically be able to digest all the pills he had accumulated in his 100 treasures pouch. It would be enough for him to increase his strength as a demon and a human cultivator. Chu Tian's words were exactly what he wanted. With just a few words, they agreed on the wager. Li Qingshan turned around and left. Hey, Li Qingshan. Hua Qinglu rushed over and grumbled, why didn't you greet me when you saw me? So much for going through thick and thin together back then. Yu Zijian said, Big brother Li. Chu Tian saw 2 more beautiful women approach Li Qingshan, and his jealousy burned even brighter. Hua Qinglu said secretly, you can't fight him. You definitely won't be able to win. What? Chapter 304. This was the first time Li Qingshan had heard of this term. He spread his hands and said, since I've already agreed, who cares what it is? Sure, it's not that easy to fight in the 100 schools of thought. Hua Qinglu raised her index finger to her lips. Seeing that many people were paying attention to them, Li Qingshan whispered, it's not a good place to talk. My friend asked me to go to the Byway building. I'd better go. I heard it from my brother. The legalists have a gathering tonight, so I won't be going. Anyway, be careful. Hao Pingyang said, is that Commander Hua's sister? I didn't expect you to be so familiar with the Hua family. They're all good people. Zhang Lanqing worriedly said, do you really want to fight Chu Tian? Ah, that kid is courting death. Hao Pingyang was full of confidence in Li Qingshan. Back then, when he was only in the 2nd layer of Qi training, he was already very powerful. Now that he was in the 6th layer of Qi training, why would he be afraid of a kid at the same level as him? Li Qingshan smiled and said, come on, let's go eat. Although the words reincarnation of a celestial being made him somewhat concerned. In the 100 Flavors Tower, Xiao Qin gazed at the dragon snake lake under the setting sun. He drank until he was tipsy. The sky had already darkened, and he returned to Cloud Wisp Island. While Lu Chuanfeng was biting his pen, deep in thought, a lone lamp on the table shone brightly, illuminating the entire room. You want to duel with someone? Li Qingshan took off his shoes in the corridor and sat down on the table. Yes, let me see. How is it going? Lu Chuanfeng was preparing for his new novel. Of course, there wouldn't be any erotic parts, so it could be spread through various channels. It's just the beginning. Sai, what's so good about a duel? It's better to stay at home and write novels. Lu Chuanfeng quickly took back the manuscript. If I win, I'll get 2,000 spirit stones. Kill him. By the way, do you know what the reincarnation of a deva is? Lu Chuanfeng said, why do you ask? That Chu Tian seems to be the reincarnation of a celestial being. Li Qingshan took out a piece of pine wood, injected it with true qi and continued his refining. What? Don't agree. Reason? You know that there's always a sky beyond the sky, right? The so-called celestial beings are those who are beyond the heavens. Because of various reasons they meet their end, but their spirits do not vanish, and they reincarnate into this world. They are born with a strange appearance and their bones are clear and their fate is deep. Moreover, once they are enlightened they become even more powerful. The reincarnation of a deva. No wonder. Li Qingshan pondered. He had seen his fair share of qi practitioners, be they friends or foes, but this was the first time he had met someone like Chu Tian. With Chu Tian's temperament and intelligence, it was truly inconceivable that he could reach the 6th layer of qi training at such a young age. It turned out that he was a transmigrator just like him. The world was so vast, and there were countless people who had fortuitous encounters and opportunities. He wasn't the only one, and the world beyond the heavens didn't belong to him alone. Lu Chuanfeng said, "You don't have to be afraid of losing face. A duel between the disciples of two families requires the consent of the heads of both families. It's fine as long as I insist on not agreeing." "No, you have to agree." Li Qingshan crushed the pine wood in his hand. Don't worry, I'll win." Li Qingshan took out another pine wood. He didn't believe that he couldn't beat a stupid bird, no matter who he was reincarnated from. However, he wouldn't be careless. Raising his qi training level was naturally the most important thing, and he still had a trump card. Lu Chuanfeng couldn't dissuade him, so he could only agree. After a few more words, Li Qingshan borrowed Lu Chuanfeng's waist tablet and went to the cultivation formation. A faint spiritual light illuminated his entire body. He took out the supreme-grade spiritual artifact, the cursive sword calligraphy, from his 100 treasures pouch. This was the strongest trump card he could use in his human form. Even before he had formed his sea of qi, the power of this supreme-grade cursive sword calligraphy was already terrifying. It was enough to threaten 9th-layer qi practitioners. Now that he had condensed his sea of qi, it was an extremely crucial qualitative change for qi practitioners. The true qi in his body was more than 10 times stronger than before. If he could truly refine it, he believed that no qi practitioner would be able to withstand a light strike from him. At that time, no matter what trump card Chu Tian had, he only needed to use the cursive sword calligraphy to teach him a lesson. Originally, the supreme-grade cursive sword calligraphy definitely couldn't be shown to others. It was like a child holding gold and walking through a busy market. But now, as his strength increased and the environment of the 100 schools of thought became more stable, the various family heads wouldn't likely come to snatch it from him. Even if they had such thoughts, they had to consider the consequences. After all, he was now the head disciple, and was a peerless genius recognized by the various family heads and the head disciple of the school of Buddhism. It was like a child had finally grown into a teenager, walking from a busy market to a school. His safety had greatly increased and he had some confidence to show off to others. Li Qingshan unfurled the cursive sword calligraphy and gazed at the crisscrossing sword slashes. He brought the fingers of his right hand together like a sword and subconsciously followed the movements of the sword, dancing around a few times. Although he could not comprehend the sword intent within immediately like Shaoan, he gradually felt like he had gained something. Compared to when he had first obtained the cursive sword calligraphy in the mountain bandit's lair, his insight and experience had increased more than tenfold. He could gradually understand many things that he couldn't understand. Li Qingshan gestured for a while and decided to get down to business first. He held the two sides of the scroll with both hands, and the Gui water true qi in his sea of qi immediately surged, rushing toward his two arms and pouring into the cursive sword calligraphy. The strokes of the cursive sword calligraphy lit up one by one. They were more numerous and brighter than they had ever been in the past. Refining a spirit artifact was a privilege that only qi practitioners who had condensed a sea of qi could have. They had to use their own true qi to leave their own imprint on the spirit artifact, causing the sea of qi in their dantian to resonate with the spirit artifact itself. If it was a flying sword or a flying knife, they could control it. However, refining a supreme-grade spirit artifact seemed a bit difficult for Li Qingshan, who was only at the 6th level of qi refinement. After more than half of the strokes on the cursive sword calligraphy lit up, they stopped, their true qi running out. A blue light flashed in Li Qingshan's eyes. He had naturally chosen to refine the spirit artifact in this formation because he had a plan in mind. Specks of light that could be seen with the naked eye flashed in the formation and merged into his body. His nearly depleted Dantian sea of qi was once again filled up and rushed into the cursive sword calligraphy. The brilliance dyed the strokes, illuminating the joy on Li Qingshan's face. Just as he was about to succeed, the smile on Li Qingshan's face froze. The process of refining the spirit artifact stopped once again, but it wasn't because he didn't have enough true qi. Every stroke of the cursive sword calligraphy was twisting and trembling, its brilliance flickering. Li Qingshan thought, oh no. With a flip of his hands, he directed the cursive sword calligraphy outwards. At the same time, the cursive sword calligraphy shone with dazzling light. Sharp, terrifying sword qi surged out. The sword chi was disorderly and the sword intent was aimless. However, Li Qingshan felt a bone-chilling coldness as he held the cursive sword calligraphy. The power that a supreme-grade spirit artifact had erupted with was far too terrifying. If it had been directed at him, even heavy injuries would be considered light unless he transformed beforehand and unleashed the spirit turtle's profound shell. There was a flash of light, and the sword chi and sword intent seemed to have never existed in the first place. Time seemed to stop for a moment. With a crack, the pillars of the bamboo building suddenly split apart. Afterwards, as if some sort of mechanism had been triggered, the exquisite, lofty bamboo building shattered into thousands of pieces. It did not collapse but scattered. Li Qingshan felt his field of vision widen. A fan-shaped empty space appeared before him. The formation was originally located in the very center of the courtyard. Now he could see the bamboo forest outside the courtyard. Heavens, what are you doing? Lu Chuanfeng heard the disturbance and rushed over. Seeing this, he was dumbfounded. I'm refining a spiritual artifact. Li Qingshan answered honestly. He even showed the cursive sword calligraphy in his hand. He had already made up his mind. If he needed to, he would show the cursive sword calligraphy to others, so there was no need for him to hide it from Lu Chuanfeng. The two of them were in the same boat anyway. That's a supreme-grade spiritual artifact. You're actually refining a supreme-grade spiritual artifact? Lu Chuanfeng had already known that this primary disciple of his was not as poor as regular Qi practitioners. However, he was still greatly surprised when he took out a supreme-grade spiritual artifact. Li Qingshan said, "What, can't I? My true Qi is very pure." Lu Chuanfeng said, "Do you have any common sense? Forget the 6th layer, even if you were at the 10th layer, you still wouldn't be able to refine a supreme-grade spiritual artifact. It's not a matter of whether your true Qi is pure or not. It's something that surpasses the abilities of Qi practitioners. It's something that only foundation establishment cultivators can do." Li Qingshan was surprised. "But little and can use the Vajra pearl once he obtains it." Lu Chuanfeng said, "Using it is one thing, refining it is another. Do you know what the 100 schools of thought say about Little An? What do they say? Evildoer, monster. Mediocre opinion," Li Qingshan said disdainfully. However, he also understood that, as someone who cultivated the Gui water condensation method, he could temporarily forget about breaking through this norm of cultivation. One was a supreme-grade spiritual artifact, one was a high-grade spiritual artifact, and one was a middle-grade spiritual artifact. Right now, he was holding the high-grade spiritual artifact, the cursive sword calligraphy, which he had obtained from the black-clothed man. He had already refined a high-grade spiritual artifact, the clear stream sword, and was very confident about this. 15 minutes later, several dozen strands of sword chi shot into the night sky. Li Qingshan had failed once again. He began to find it rather difficult to accept, as he had clearly succeeded once already. However, he understood the reason behind it after some thought. Although he had refined the high-grade spiritual artifact, the clear stream sword, that was because the clear stream sword was of the water element, while he cultivated Gui water true Qi. The spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression had granted him extraordinary senses for the water element, which was why he could refine it so easily. Even after these various advantages were taken into account, refining a high-grade spiritual artifact would not actually be that easy for a 6th-layer Qi practitioner. He would usually use a middle-grade spiritual artifact as well. However, Li Qingshan did not become dejected. In the next moment he took out the weakest cursive sword calligraphy. Its original name was the Sword Qi calligraphy, and it had come from the auction of the School of Miscellany. It was only a middle-grade spiritual artifact. Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief. Perhaps he should have started with the weakest cursive sword calligraphy right from the beginning. He had been a little too eager for success. As he channeled his true Qi into it, the cursive sword calligraphy glowed. Before he could even celebrate, the light suddenly began to tremble, on the verge of collapse again. Although it was only a medium-grade spirit artifact, its explosiveness was far beyond that of an ordinary medium-grade spirit artifact. However, Li Qingshan did not dodge at all. He stared straight at the cursive sword calligraphy, and the light stabilized once again. Not only did it stop radiating outwards, but it even retracted bit by bit. Suddenly, Li Qingshan saw the twisted strokes suddenly move. No, it was not the strokes that moved, but countless swords swinging about. The strokes were the trajectories they left behind, like the footprints left behind by a traveler in the desert. However, compared to the traveler, the deep footprints were so brief and insignificant. Li Qingshan did not know who he was, but he felt a sense of admiration from the bottom of his heart. When Oxen praised the author of the cursive sword calligraphy, he still did not understand the deeper meaning behind it. Just how capable was this person to gain Brother Ox's recognition? Now, however, he began to understand a little. Perhaps this sword style should not have appeared in this world. As he sighed, Li Qingshan finally finished refining the cursive sword calligraphy. Otherwise it'd be even uglier. I'll definitely take back what I've lost. Brother Tian is so powerful. You've subdued the enemy without even fighting. Lu Changqing glanced at the pale-faced Lu Chuanfeng and sneered. Wang Pushi cursed aloud. All he knew was that he was out of his mind, which was why he would bet on Li Qingshan. If it was not the secluded dwelling, there was no special reason. He was tempted to go over and drag Li Qingshan out. He wasn't afraid of losing. It was just some inferior spiritual stones, but he couldn't lose like this. Hua Sengzan frowned. Qingshan is at a crucial point in his cultivation. He can't stop. Why can't he stop cultivating his fart qi? I think he's clearly scared. Scared? The great martial arts field was in an uproar. Those who lost spiritual stones cursed aloud, while those who won couldn't help but mock them. The so-called novelists had once again become the laughingstock of the 100 schools of thought. The slovenly Taoist priest rubbed his chin. That kid didn't look like someone who would avoid a fight. Could he have been infected by that coward Lu Chuanfeng? In the underground dwelling on Contention Island, Li Qingshan had indeed forgotten about the duel. Although little and remembered, he didn't remind him. Even if he did, Li Qingshan definitely wouldn't come out of seclusion right now. The progress of his cultivation had completely exceeded Li Qingshan's initial expectations. Originally, he planned on digesting most of the pills in his 100 treasures pouch before pushing the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression a step further. However, this step was not a small one. It took him to the edge of the second layer of the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression. He was only a step away from success. At this moment, the virtue accumulation pill he had won from Begonia and the pills Little and had obtained from the One Thought Master played a decisive role. By now, Li Qingshan had already ingested all the pills he could use for cultivation in his 100 treasures pouch. Only the virtue accumulation pill remained, which he swallowed before refining bit by bit. At a time like this, whether it was the 2,000 spiritual stones on the line or his personal glory, none of them could distract him at all. To him, these three abilities were like the path of white bone and great beauty to little Anne. They were his foundation, while the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression was the foundation of his foundation. It was very likely for the second layer of the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression to be the key to opening the gates to Demon General. Once he took that step, Li Qingshan would be completely different. The world would be completely different. Time passed by slowly. Who knew how long it had been? Suddenly, resplendent, azure light rose up from Li Qingshan's body. The light actually vaguely formed the shape of a spirit turtle, shaking its head and wagging its tail. It was lifelike. Only when it filled the entire dwelling did it suddenly begin to shrink, shrinking into Li Qingshan's body, shrinking into the tiny spirit turtle's demon core. It was small, but it had grown larger than before. Li Qingshan opened his eyes. Light flowed through them. He felt like his heart was as still as water, extremely calm. He had finally reached the second layer of the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression. However, he was unable to understand how to break through to Demon General. However, this was within his expectations. Otherwise, undergoing the heavenly tribulation and becoming a demon general in the 100 schools of thought would basically be insane. No matter how well the underground dwelling was sealed, it would not be able to conceal this aura. By then he would be surrounded and beaten up by the various school leaders. However, the great door had already opened for him. He could vaguely see the endless scenery inside, and he placed a foot on the threshold. Right now, all he needed to do was pull his other foot back and step in. This process was not as easy as it sounded. Who knew how many cultivators had stagnated at the 10th layer, unable to take that step even after a decade? Who knew how many demons had lost their lives to the heavenly tribulation either? He needed to be as cautious as possible and accumulate even more resources to complete this crucial step in his life, his demon life. Even without experimenting, Li Qingshan could sense that even Foundation establishment cultivators would struggle to break through his spirit turtle's profound shell as long as they did not possess a wondrous treasure like Fu Qingjin or had a cultivation as high as the slovenly Taoist priest. Most importantly, he could continue practicing the two abilities of the Ox Demon and Tiger Demon that had stagnated. If he could reach the third layer for both of them, it would probably be very difficult for the spirit turtle at the second layer to suppress it. However, if he could only reach the third layer for the Ox Demon, there would be no problem. As for the Ox Demon's fist of great strength, its power would become more and more startling as he cultivated it. A tough body would be the most important bargaining chip against the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, Little and reminded Li Qingshan about the duel. Only then did Li Qingshan come to a realization. Looking at the time, it should already be summer outside. He gained a deeper understanding of the concept of time as a cultivator. It was no exaggeration to say that there was no sun or moon in the mountains. Although he felt that it was a slight pity, he did not take it to heart. If he missed it, then he missed it. He would let the kid gloat for now. Was he afraid that he would not be able to make up for it in the future? It was not like he had missed it, so there was no hurry. Then I won't continue. Li Qingshan glanced at the corner. Millipede had also curled up into a ball, absorbing the spiritual qi in the dwelling. He seemed to be even more focused on cultivation than him. This place was obviously more suited for his cultivation and recovery than the bug pouch. Millipede had once been the person with the highest cultivation here, so his understanding of the no time in the mountains was even deeper than Li Qingshan's. Little and nodded as well. Recently, her comprehension of the path of white bone and great beauty had reached a whole new level through her cultivation of the Guardian King's scripture of demon subdual. As for the cloud bookcase of the 7 lots, she needed to spend even more time peering and cultivating it bit by bit. Li Qingshan took out the high-quality cursive sword calligraphy once again. Although he had been focusing on his demonic cultivation, his Qi practitioner cultivation was still at the 6th layer. However, this time he was completely confident. After condensing the sea of Qi, the remaining 3 meridians, the conception, governing, and Chong meridians, could be cultivated in 10 years, which would be considered fast. Then, it would take another 10 years to open all 12 meridians, and reach the peak of Qi practitioners, the 10th level of Qi practitioner. After that, there would be another 20 to 30 years to slowly comprehend the final step, or rather, the first step, foundation establishment. Reaching the 10th level of Qi practitioner before the age of 50 could be considered an elite, before the age of 40, a hero, and before the age of 30, a genius. This was the path that most talented Qi practitioners, and even many foundation establishment cultivators, walked. There was no shortage of geniuses like Hua Sangzan, but they were all famous geniuses. And Li Qingshan was only 17 years old. If he continued cultivating at this speed, he could easily join the ranks of geniuses. If he knew the real time that Li Qingshan had spent, he would probably be so shocked that his eyeballs would pop out. It had only been 3 months, not the 9 months that Lu Chuanfeng had thought. Although he could continuously absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Qi practitioner didn't just need spiritual energy. Originally, he wouldn't have been able to reach the 7th level of Qi practitioner so quickly until he discovered another use of the sword Qi in his Dantian. Chapter 310. After reaching the 6th level of Qi refining, converting spiritual energy into true Qi to attack his acupoints wasn't as easy as it had been in the beginning. At this moment, the sword Qi in his Dantian gave Li Qingshan a huge inspiration. He tried to merge the sword Qi into his true Qi to forcefully open his meridians and attack his acupoints. He never imagined that he would actually succeed. His own true Qi was extremely pure, and with the help of the sword Qi in his Dantian, he no longer faced any bottlenecks on the path of Qi refining. As expected, the cursive sword tome was extraordinary. Lu Chuanfeng watched as Li Qingshan took a step out of the corridor, the cloud rapidly gathering beneath his feet. The speed at which he executed his magical technique was astonishing. Where are you going? To find Chu Tian, of course. It's best if I take back those spirit stones. Li Qingshan waved his hand without even turning his head. Little and leapt onto the cloud. I'll let you have 3 moves. With a whoosh, the cloud left a long tail behind it as it sped away. On the Confucian island of virtuous virtue, the Buddhists had a forest of pagodas, while the Confucians had a forest of steels. On the Confucian island of virtuous virtue, the Buddhists had a forest of pagodas, while the Confucians had a forest of steels. Chu Tian and a group of Confucian disciples sat in front of a large stele, impatiently listening to the professor recount the past. What dogs hid virtuous virtue? How could he compare to a celestial? Chu Tian watched as the professor suddenly stopped talking and looked behind him. When he turned his head, his eyes went wide. He saw Li Qingshan leaning against the stone stele, smiling at him. He didn't seem depressed or resentful because of his defeat. In fact, he even waved his hand as if he were greeting an old friend. Furthermore, he was also in the 7th level of qi refining. Just like him. This greatly disappointed Chu Tian, who had hoped to see Li Qingshan look like a defeated dog. Ignoring the fact that he was in the middle of a lecture, he suddenly stood up. Li Qingshan. It's about time. Let's call it a day. The professor looked up at the sky. He didn't want to offend a genius like Chu Tian, who was currently in the limelight. In any case, not many people were willing to listen. The Confucian disciples gathered around Chu Tian and gazed at Li Qingshan nearby. Their gazes were filled with contempt and disdain. Chapter 46. I'll let you have 3 moves. Chu Tian said, You still dare to come? Li Qingshan said, Why wouldn't I dare? What do you want? Could it be that you're here to admit defeat? That's more like a man calling me boss. From now on we. Have you ever beaten me? Li Qingshan's interruption enraged Chu Tian. He pointed at Li Qingshan, Don't think that I can't do anything to you just because you're acting like a shameless dog. Li Qingshan said, How about it? Do you want me to give you a chance and let you win? So it's like that. Alright, I agree. I'm just afraid that you'll run away with your tail between your legs again. Chu Tian sneered. The Confucian disciples roared with laughter. Li Qingshan stretched out 4 fingers and said, This time, let's bet this number. 4,000 spiritual stones. The laughter stopped. The Confucian disciples who came to listen to this lecture were all new disciples. In their entire lives they had never seen so many spirit stones. They couldn't help but be frightened by this number. Chu Tian was also stunned. Li Qingshan said, What? Don't you have that many spirit stones? Do you want me to lend them to you? All right. Since you want to give me spirit stones, how could I not agree? Chu Tian sneered. His heart was filled with wild joy. He was filled with absolute confidence. He had already comprehended the 5 elements Grand Palm to an extremely deep level. Because he cultivated 5 types of true qi, the 5 elements supported each other. His true qi was more than 10 times that of an ordinary 7th layer qi practitioner. How could he lose? The same place and time. Let's set it to 3 days from now. Otherwise we'll run into some trouble and let a villain get carried away. This time I'll make you accept your defeat wholeheartedly, Chu Tian said fiercely. Not only did he want to win, he wanted to ruthlessly humiliate Li Qingshan. He wanted him to understand the difference between a mortal and a genius. 3 days later, on the great martial arts field of the School of the Military. This was Li Qingshan's first time coming to War Island. The great martial arts field was like a giant wrestling ring. However, there weren't any densely packed seats. Instead, there were tall platforms of different heights erected in the surroundings. These were the places to watch the martial arts. From afar, the levels were distinct and rather rhythmic. There wasn't the slightest bit of disorder. It was clearly the work of the School of Moism's architects. Chu Tian stood with his hands behind his back. His white clothes fluttered in the wind. Although he couldn't be considered handsome, he was filled with a powerful aura in the eyes of the bystanders. The surrounding tall platforms were filled with people. Such a grand bet had already attracted the attention of the entire 100 schools of thought. Figures could also be vaguely seen standing on the few VIP seats at the highest point. Wang Pushi looked up at the sun. The time was almost here. However, Li Qingshan hadn't arrived yet. The other spectator stands were in a heated discussion. On one of the tall platforms, a group of legalist disciples were either sitting or standing. Among them, there was no lack of familiar faces that Li Qingshan recognized. Why isn't that guy here yet? Don't tell me he's scared again. He's giving away several thousand spiritual stones in a single go. Why haven't I encountered a good opponent like him before? Stop talking. He's the primary disciple of the School of Novels. You can't afford to offend him. Wu Zhen said extremely seriously. It led to a series of laughter. Wu Zhen smiled too. He thought he was complacent. Rongji, how much did you bet this time? Chen Rongji said, The same as last time. The same? You won't? Last time, Chen Rongji had bet on Li Qingshan and lost quite a lot of spiritual stones, so Wu Zhen had mocked Li Qingshan greatly. He never thought she would bet like that again this time, which left Wu Zhen rather annoyed. Right now, she had quite a few pursuers in the 100 schools of thought. She even seemed to have a rather ambiguous relationship with the genius Chu Tian, but she remained distant from him the entire time. Wang Pushi lowered his head and asked Hua Sengzan beside him, "How much did you bet this time?" Hua Sengzan sat on the edge of the stands and extended 2 fingers without even looking back. 2000. Chapter 311. The stands fell silent. Chu Tian's strength. Everyone was shocked. Not only did the 3 moves contain metal, wood, and fire elemental techniques, and they were startlingly powerful. If it was them, they would probably be killed in the first move. Being in such a flame, it would be difficult for them to escape death. Against an opponent like that, how could they win? And they even pretended to let him take 3 moves. They were basically digging their own graves. Yu Zijin felt her hand ache from the grip. Hua Qinglu panicked. "Are you worried about your spiritual stones?" "I'm worried about him." Hua Qinglu suddenly understood. Her face reddened. "Oh my, you're still in the mood to joke around. Don't worry, Qinglu. He doesn't seem like someone who will be defeated by a move like that." Yu Zijin patted Hua Qinglu's hand. On Li Qing, mountain. That person's shadow seemed to appear. It was an unyielding will. Lu Chongqing smiled. Chu Tian's temperament was still a little lacking, but his strength was unquestionable. Not only was his true qi 10 times that of regular people, he also used the principle of mutual generation of the 5 elements. The power of his techniques was extremely great too. Li Qingshan wanted to fight him without knowing his limits, but he was asking for trouble. If he used this move, even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. He couldn't fight anymore, right? Chu Tian laughed aloud. Just like the last duel. "Just you. Are you worthy of letting me take 3 moves?" "General Han. In this battle, I've won, haven't I?" Han Anjuan stood on a high platform not far away. He stood like a stone statue, as if he didn't hear what Chu Tian said. Suddenly he raised his hand. He pointed at the raging fire. Chu Tian frowned. His pupils constricted. Li Qingshan stood unscathed in the sea of fire. He didn't even change his posture. His entire body. It was shrouded in an oval light blue screen. No matter how much the raging flames attacked, none of them moved an inch. Li Qingshan said, 3 moves. Water curtain. This was one of the many water spells. He was one of the more famous ones. It was a defensive spell. It could neutralize power and counteract attacks. However, the water screen art of a 7th layer Qi practitioner was nothing. How could it resist Chu Tian's raging flame bird? Not just Chu Tian. Even Lu Zhangqing could not figure it out. Li Qingshan laughed and said, "What do you think? Do you want me to let you have another 3 moves? Since you're the one who doesn't know what's good for you, don't blame me for being merciless." Chu Tian was enraged. His hands formed a seal. It was extremely fast. It was as if a few pairs of hands had appeared out of thin air. Li Qingshan did not take the opportunity to attack. He just crossed his arms and watched. It was as if he had really made up his mind. He was going to let him have another 3 moves. Even the heads of the various families felt that he was being too arrogant. But in his heart, he had other plans. Chu Tian withdrew his hands. All the illusions disappeared. And in front of his chest, he suddenly slapped the ground. An incredible loud roar. The onlookers felt that the high platform under their feet seemed to be trembling slightly. It was as if there was an earthquake. A crack instantly appeared between Chu Tian's hands. It spread to the feet of Li Qingshan. A giant earthy yellow palm stretched out from the ground. It grabbed at Li Qingshan. 5 thick fingers. It was as if a stone pillar was clamping over. Li Qingshan jumped up. He rode on the clouds. He flew around the field. He looked down. The entire martial arts field was covered in cracks. The earthy yellow arm stretched out from the ground. It reached into the sky. Then it was pressed to the ground. A vague human figure borrowed the force to stand up. It was like a giant that had slept for 1,000 years. Hundreds of stone pillars on the platform. It formed a semicircular screen of light. It covered the entire great martial arts stage. The shockwave dissipated. A huge crater was left on the ground. Its power made everyone speechless. Was this really a spell cast by a 7th layer Qi refinement cultivator? The Earth Strongman raised its arm. It could almost grab every corner of the great martial arts stage. And there was no vital point to speak of. Li Qingshan rode a cloud. Just like a flying insect. He weaved in and out of the way. He narrowly avoided the grabs of the earthen strongman again and again. Chu Tian laughed loudly. "What? You only know how to run. Or do you want to consume my true chi? I might as well tell you. I am the Earth Strongman. Once it was born. It uses the earth as its foundation. Its power is endless. 12 moves. Chu Tian was startled. What did you say? Li Qingshan laughed. Going easy on you? The sloppy Taoist laughed. He drank a mouthful of wine. This kid is still so arrogant. I like it. What a pity. Fuck you. Chu Tian was furious. The Earth Strongman opened its huge mouth. It let out a soundless roar. It moved its feet like an earthquake. It opened its arms. It pounced towards Li Qingshan. A huge shadow covered him. Li Qingshan felt like a mountain was falling towards him. The smile on his face didn't change. Since you want to play, then I'll play with you. Boom. The two huge palms clapped together heavily. The clouds dissipated. Hua Qinglu cried out in shock. This time. Wasn't Li Qingshan dead for sure? Why didn't the referee Han Anjuan do anything? Was he really going to watch Li Qingshan die? Chu Tian said, I told you. I want to kill you. No one. The Earth Strongman opened its hands. There was nothing inside. There was only a pool of water. Water incarnation technique. Water condensation technique. It could confuse the real from the fake. In the field. Sounds of surprise rose. A shadow covered Chu Tian. Chu Tian didn't care. At this height, the only thing that could block the light was the clouds. Chu Tian saw many Qi practitioners pointing behind them in surprise. He suddenly turned around. He saw the cloud. A cloud giant even taller than the Earth Strongman. His left hand grabbed the Earth Strongman's shoulder. His right hand clenched into a fist. It fiercely hit the Earth Strongman's face. The Earth Strongman staggered backwards. It fell heavily to the ground. It hit the light screen that covered the martial arts field. A large part of the Earth Strongman's face caved in, revealing the soil and rocks inside. It poured down. This punch was supposed to hit Chu Tian on the Earth Strongman's shoulder. But his reaction wasn't slow. He dodged it. Li Qingshan sat on the cloud giant's shoulder. He said, what a coincidence. I also know similar spells. During the time he was in seclusion, Li Qingshan didn't just practice Qi. He also tried to practice the spells that came with the Gui water condensing Qi method. And once he practiced, he felt different. These spells that originally required him to spend a lot of time to understand and master. Suddenly, he didn't have any difficulties. As long as he learned a little, he could use them. And the effect was excellent. He didn't become a genius overnight. This had nothing to do with comprehension. It was instinct. Like how fish can swim, birds can fly, controlling all the water spirits in the world. This was the instinct of the spirit turtle. The change that the spirit turtle Qi suppression method brought to him. Almost the essence. So he stayed in the underground cave. He learned all the dozen or so water spells. 3 days before the duel, Li Qingshan didn't stay idle. He asked Lu Chuanfeng to find some more powerful spells. Water spells that were suitable for duels. Lu Chuanfeng wasn't doing well. But he was still the head of a family. Senior and junior brothers sold these things. They had originally come to watch Li Qingshan make a fool of himself, but when Li Qingshan truly demonstrated the strength to take on Chu Tian, they subconsciously leaned towards Li Qingshan. This was because Li Qingshan was a weakling. Compared to Chu Tian, he was a mortal like them. They wanted to see a mortal defeat a genius, just like how ordinary people always looked forward to miracles. Chu Tian descended from the sky and used the 5-element palm seal to shatter the Cloud Ridge giant. He looked around and gave a cold laugh in his heart. Truly an idiot, daring to scold me. Facing my 5-element palm seal head-on, you're probably half dead by now. You've actually reduced me to such a horrible state. Watch as I take your life with a single palm strike. Hua Qinglu stood up and arrived on the platform where Han Anjuan stood. Uncle Han, please decide the outcome. However, Han Anjuan, who had always been unsmiling and as cold as a rock, curled his lips slightly. The outcome has been determined. Chapter 315. Lu Chongqing frowned. How could this legalist disciple know about bewitching techniques? However, seeing that she was Chu Tian's friend and had indeed calmed his mind, he didn't stop her. I and Qian Rongji used the opportunity when Chu Tian's mind was in a mess to imprint her image deeply into his heart. Of course, this wasn't something like a thought seed. She didn't know how to do it, and even if she did, she wouldn't dare to do it in front of so many patriarchs. Her bewitching technique was completely harmless. At most, it would make it easier for Chu Tian to develop a good impression of her and love her. However, this was enough. Compared to the rude and inferior methods of a thought seed, this was more in line with her aesthetic standards. She knew that Chu Tian had something that he didn't reveal to others, not even to the two girls beside him. However, through her inquisition she found out about the existence of that thing. Just what was it that made the arrogant and conceited Chu Tian act like this? No matter what it was, she would definitely obtain that thing. At the very least, she would have a powerful and easily manipulated fighter. At the very least, she would have a human-shaped medicinal pill. She was afraid that the 5-elemental true qi wouldn't be easy to digest. Chu Tian regained his fighting spirit and glared at Li Qingshan with eyes filled with hatred. Li Qingshan, you were lucky this time. I won't let you go. I said that if I want to kill you, no one can stop me. Li Qingshan casually said, I await your arrival. Chu Tian's mind relaxed and he fell into a deep slumber. Of the two girls beside him, the older one said to Qian Rongji, I'm sorry, Sister Qian. We wronged you. Qian Rongji sighed softly. I can understand your feelings. Take good care of him. Although Li Qingshan didn't understand the reason behind it, he still felt a wave of sorrow for Chu Tian. Hopefully you haven't been swallowed by this poisonous snake before you recover. I still want to earn some more spirit stones. Chu Tian was brought to Benevolence Island by the Medicine family's patriarch for treatment. In the blink of an eye, all the patriarchs and chief disciples disappeared. Qingshan, you don't have to hold a grudge against the Confucian faction. This battle is not necessarily a bad thing for Chu Tianlai. It is a blessing for the 100 schools of thought to have a genius like you. In the future there will be many sword competitions on the Virtuous Island. You can come and participate. That sword move of yours was very interesting. Lu Changqing left behind these words. Just now he left, displaying his outstanding demeanor. At this time Hua Sengzan came to Li Qingshan and asked, Where's your wolf token? Li Qingshan was shocked. Could it be that Wang Pushi disliked him to this extent? If he really was going to be stripped of his position as a hawk wolf guard, he would not say much. He took out the black wolf tablet and passed it to Hua Sengzan. Hua Sengzan took it with one hand and returned a red copper wolf token to him. The glistening red wolf token had fine veins, and its fur was distinguishable. It felt heavy in his hand. Li Qingshan asked, What's this? Hua Sengzan said, Congratulations. You've been promoted. Old Wang told me to give this to you. In the future, if you want to gather information or earn spiritual stones, you can pay a visit to the Hawk Wolf Guard of the Clear River Prefecture. Alright. Li Qingshan smiled. If a person wanted to gain the recognition of others, they would have to prove themselves. Wang Pushi and Li Qingshan did not have any grievances. It was just because of their poor first impression, coupled with the fact that they did not get along with each other afterwards. Until today. Li Qingshan had proven himself, but that did not mean Wang Pushi had become fond of Li Qingshan. It had been less than a year since Li Qingshan and An entered the 100 schools of thought, but Juchenzi firmly believed that they would definitely become influential figures in the Clear River Prefecture in the future, or perhaps even more than that. Using the alcohol, Juchenzi said, What happened back then was not what my master wanted either. He originally admired you very much. He often mentioned to me that it was a pity. Li Qingshan said, Since it happened back then, there's no need to mention it now. There's nothing wrong with the family. At the very least, we stand on equal footing. We're both primary disciples. Although the slovenly Taoist priest had screwed him over in the past, he was not trying to harm him. At most, he just wanted to vent his anger. Li Qingshan did not let him vent his anger either, cursing him a little instead. With the slovenly Taoist priest's cultivation and status, if he was slightly narrow-minded, it might lead to endless trouble for Li Qingshan. It was evident that he was quite broad-minded. Why would Li Qingshan be obsessed with this? Zhang Lanqing stood to one side with a smile. His face was also slightly flushed. He discovered that if he counted carefully, there were actually 5 primary disciples present. Apart from Li Qingshan's school of Buddhism, Taoism and the art of war, all of them were renowned major schools. Such a person, no matter where he went, would emit a dazzling light. Li Qingshan returned to Cloud Wisp Island alone, while An went to Ansrava Island. As the primary disciple of the school of Buddhism, she had not even spent as much time on Ansrava Island as an acolyte. No matter how ignorant she was about the ways of the world, she knew this was not particularly appropriate. Moreover, she shouldered another important mission, which was to help Li Qingshan gather pills to complete the final step. The one-thought master's feelings were mixed, but he still felt happy when he saw his primary disciple return. Before and had even said anything, he offered up many pills for her to cultivate with. No matter how he felt, it would be a complete waste if he allowed a supreme genius like her to suffer on his Ansrava island or waste her time because of a lack of pills. If he knew the reason behind this, he might have felt like slamming his head against the ground. Fortunately, he probably would never know. He could still roughly calculate how many pills other disciples had consumed and how much cultivation they had completed, but who could calculate her cultivation? And did not need these pills either. The true qi she had condensed in her body right now was nothing more than an illusion. Practicing the path of white bone and great beauty still required refining flesh and blood as a foundation. Li Qingshan had already agreed to take her out to uphold justice in the near future. Yep, that was how he described it. In her second secondary school, it was gourmet. And said, "Master, I want to listen to you expound on the scriptures." All right. Which one do you want to listen to? I'll tell you right now. The one-thought master was overjoyed. Expounding on the scriptures was an extremely important part of cultivation for Buddhist disciples, but it was also extremely easy for it to be overlooked, especially to genius disciples. If she were a regular disciple, the one-thought master would tell them earnestly, "Only by comprehending the essence of Buddhism can you achieve twice the results with half the effort when practicing Buddhism." However, with Anne's cultivation speed, what other method did she need to achieve twice the results with half the effort? Now that Anne had taken the initiative to request to listen to the scriptures without boasting about her talent, he obviously felt happy from the bottom of his heart. Little did he know that Anne understood this better than anyone else as she practiced the path of white bone and great beauty. Although she had read through the jade slip called the Scripture Depository, Buddhist scriptures were different from the path of the sword. No matter how clever she was, she could not simply comprehend the essence within. From a certain perspective, scriptures that were purely ideological were much more profound and complicated than most cultivation methods. And said, all of them. The one-thought master could only smile bitterly. There were as many Buddhist scriptures as the ocean. Although he had read through them all, he had only specialized in a portion of them, but that was already extremely impressive. And would have been fine if she had not asked, but she had thrown a problem the moment she did. The one-thought master scratched his bald head and finally made up his mind. He wanted to hold a Dharma assembly and invite all the eminent Buddhist monks he knew in the Clear River Prefecture, no, the 9 prefectures of the Rui Commandery, to come to the Clear River Prefecture to recite for her. He could not just let him bear this punishment alone. When he imagined how his seniors and juniors would be shocked speechless by her, he actually felt rather eager inside. Amitabha, I have sinned. Seeing Li Qingshan return through the snow, Lu Chuanfeng suddenly raised his head and straightened his neck. He asked, "You won?" Due to his experience last time, he did not dare to watch the battle this time. "I won." Sun Fubai said, "I also brought something back for you." "Oh, what's this?" Lu Chuanfeng took an ordinary white cloth bag from Sun Fubai's hands. Aside from the red silk binding the bag, there was nothing special about it. There was no sign of spiritual energy either. Li Qingshan also became curious. For cultivators, anything without spiritual energy was not considered a good thing. This gift from Sun Fubai was a little strange. Lu Chuanfeng opened it and saw that it was filled with papers and letters. In order to get feedback from his subordinates in time so that Lu Chuanfeng could change his approach, Sun Fubai had the members of the Cloud Wisp Society ask for their opinions after their storytelling performances in various places. Later on, many listeners would send messages to the Master of Wind and Moon. Even if they were illiterate, there would still be people who would write and record the messages. All of them would be collected and sent to Lu Chuanfeng. Lu Chuanfeng hurriedly opened it and started reading. Naturally, most of the messages were praises, but there were also quite a few suggestions and expectations. He sat there, smiling foolishly. He was the head of the family who had the least dignity in the 100 schools of thought, and was often mocked and looked down upon by others. He had finally found the respect that he hadn't felt in a long time, and he truly understood the beauty of writing novels. This gift was indeed much more valuable than any spiritual pill or spiritual stone. Then Sun Fubai said to Li Qingshan, "Qingshan, you like to drink, so I've brought back fine alcohol from various places for you. Although it can't compare to spiritual alcohol, which can assist with cultivation, they all have their own tastes." The territory of the 1500 kilometers of Clear River Prefecture produced several dozen types of famous fine alcohol. The ingredients and brewing methods all differed. Sun Fubai then selected the aged high-grade alcohol from them and brought it back for Li Qingshan. Let alone everything else, just the thought alone was enough to touch people's hearts. Being able to taste fine alcohol from various places while sitting at home was even more delightful. Li Qingshan accepted the several dozen jars of fine alcohol and bowed. "Thank you, Fubai." Sun Fubai smiled. "This is all a small matter. Compared to your idea, it's nothing at all. Now that I've borrowed your idea, I've already planted the seeds. If you don't enjoy the shade below, then you'll be letting down my kind intentions." Having reached this point, just who could still turn him down? Li Qingshan said, "I want to learn how to condense a divine talisman of great creation. Please teach me, Fubai." The power of faith could take on many forms. Although it was very ordinary in Lu Chuanfeng's hands, he didn't know how to fight. For example, he could summon a chain out of thin air. Not to mention that he sure had no evidence. Even if he had evidence to prove that they beat him, he would at most be punished a little. However, he sure could not stay in the 100 schools of thought anymore. An ungrateful villain who returned kindness with enmity would not be welcomed anywhere. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to invite Hao Pingyang and the others to the 100 Flavors restaurant for breakfast, but Zhang Lanqing insisted on taking them home. Afterwards, he invited his partner of cultivation out. She was not some supreme beauty, but she was gentle and pleasant. When the female practitioner saw the two chief disciples, both of whom were influential figures in the 100 schools of thought, the little complaint in her heart disappeared. She was happy that Zhang Lanqing could make such friends, so she personally cooked a hearty breakfast for them. During that time, Zhang Lanqing assisted him from one side. The two of them seemed to be in perfect harmony, which made Li Qingshan sigh in amazement. Everyone had their own path of cultivation. The path of cultivation was vast, but it was not necessarily something that could only be achieved by a single person. And even if there were no results in the end, he would not feel any regret when he looked back on the past. A few bowls of porridge and a few plates of side dishes were served. Although the taste was average, Li Qingshan still praised Zhang Lanqing for his good fortune, which came from the bottom of his heart. The sky was bright, and it was time to start today's study and cultivation. Hao Pingyang said, "You have missed a lot of courses on refining weapons." Li Qingshan was in a dilemma about whether to continue writing novels, so he was not in the mood to learn to refine qi. He said, "I have something to do in the military school. As for refining weapons, let's put it off for now." Since the head of the military school, Han Anjuan, had personally invited him, it was reasonable for him to go. Han Anjuan's words also made him a little concerned. He had not gone through systematic combat training and was purely self-comprehending, so it was inevitable that his moves were a little rough. Although he could always display 120% of his strength in every battle by relying on his absolute combat talent, reaching the level of being able to hit someone is a good move. However, if he could get a few words of guidance from a combat master like Han Anjuan and hone himself, he would definitely gain a lot. Compared to spells, body techniques were his foundation, especially when he was transforming into a demon. Moreover, according to his experience, sweating a little and exercising for a while would also improve his mood. While the disciples of other schools were still lazily getting out of bed, all the disciples of the military school had begun their training. All of them stood bare-chested in the world of ice and snow. Everyone would first be splashed with a bucket of cold water and then be chased into the frozen Dragon Snake Lake to swim around Great War Island. It was completely military management, but no one even frowned. When they jumped into the frozen lake, if they flinched even a little, the instructor behind them, which was equivalent to a professor, would immediately give them a kick. There was no so-called respect for qi practitioners at all. However, it had already been more than half a year since the entrance exam. Even new disciples would not perform like this again. Those who could not endure this kind of life had already left the military school. Among the 100 schools of thought, the military school was the only school whose disciples would voluntarily leave, and it was also the only school that did not have female disciples. Body refinement was different from qi refinement. There was no lack of hardships in tempering the muscles and bones and tempering the physique. Only creatures like men would give up their good days and experience a certain sense of pride and passionate brotherhood through this kind of self-torturing training. Among the 100 schools of thought, the disciples of the military school were also the most united. Han Che was swimming at the very front with his team when he suddenly heard a loud whistle above his head. He looked up and saw Li Qingshan sitting on a cloud. He said with a smile, "Your figure is not bad, although your alcohol tolerance is a little lacking." Ah. He then thought of the glorious achievement of getting Han Che drunk. After hearing Li Qingshan's intentions, Han Che immediately ordered the team to return to the shore. He then asked Li Qingshan to wait outside. Li Qingshan arrived at the core building of the military school. Outside the martial arts hall, there were hundreds of wide and tall steps. Hundreds of military school disciples stood on two sides, all of them naked and expressionless, looking straight ahead. Li Qingshan said, "You're too polite. There's no need to hold a welcoming ceremony." Han Che appeared at the top of the steps. He was dressed in black and looked even more heroic. "If you want to receive pointers from the family head, we'll have to see if you're qualified." Li Qingshan said, "Then how do I qualify?" Han Che seemed to smile, but because it was too fast, Li Qingshan also doubted his own eyes. "No spells, just fight your way up." Chapter 318. Li Qingshan had already expected Han Che to say this. Looking up, there were at least 700 to 800 military disciples standing on the long flight of stairs. Their cultivations range from the lowest 2 or 3 layers to the highest 7 or 8 layers. This article came from the literature library. Each and every one of them had an aura of bravery and ferocity. If the ordinary Qi practitioners were like dogs, then they were like wild wolves. Although at first glance they seemed to be about the same size, but when it came to actual combat, they were two completely different concepts. Han Che said, "Today's training mission is actual combat. The goal is to defeat this person." "Yes, sir." Military orders were like mountains, and once spoken, it was the law. Several hundred pairs of eyes looked at Li Qingshan at the same time, their gazes as sharp as knives. Every one of them had seen the battle that day with their own eyes. Towards this person who defeated the strong, defeated Chu Tian, and received Han Anjuan's praise, they felt admiration and praise in their hearts, but not fear. The so-called soldiers originally had to put aside life and death when facing enemies 10 times their size, and charge with all their might. Li Qingshan could truly sense the existence of the might of the army. When the wills of the people merged into one, it formed a monster called army. The huge momentum, like an avalanche, fell down like an army of 100,000. Yes, if it was an army formed by mortals, even 100,000 strong army could not stop them. Under such circumstances, it was already rare for a regular cultivator to use 30% of their strength. But what kind of person was Li Qingshan? He had never been intimidated by anyone's momentum in his life. Compared to writing, this kind of scene was what he was good at and even liked. Not only was he calm and unafraid, his fighting spirit was stimulated. He rubbed his palms together and laughed loudly, "Tai, we are friends who drank together. Although I was the one who knocked you out, haha, you used this formation to deal with me. When I go up, I will definitely give you 3 punches." These words, however, angered the military disciples. Although they admired Li Qingshan's strength, he was only a 7th layer practitioner without using magic weapons. However, in a situation where he didn't use any magical weapons, he was only a 7th layer Qi practitioner. Even if he knew how to refine his body, who here didn't? Not to mention fighting, he would be exhausted to death. Han Che snorted coldly and said, "Then come and try. Don't think that you're invincible just because you defeated a piece of trash." Li Qingshan turned to Little An and said, "You wait here, watch how I break his array." As soon as he finished speaking, he stepped onto the steps. More than 10 figures leaped up. It immediately obscured Li Qingshan's vision, and he bellowed out as he attacked his entire body at the same time. Their coordination was flawless. It was as if one person had sealed off Li Qingshan's front, back, left, and right. There was no way to dodge. Bang, 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 bang. Li Qingshan's entire body was hit almost at the same time. His fists, legs, palms, and knees were like the sudden thrust of a spear or the violent strike of a sledgehammer. Even though it was a huge boulder, it was still smashed into pieces. "We've won." This was the thought of all the military disciples who attacked. Without any protective magical techniques, and without any protective Qi, how could he block their punches and kicks with just his flesh and blood? "This is our military school's welcoming ceremony," a military disciple said in response to Li Qingshan's joke just now. Li Qingshan lowered his head. His hair was shaken loose and fell down to cover his face. "Is that so? Then this kind of weak and powerless punch seems too unenthusiastic." They could see that Li Qingshan was not a reckless person who would barge around randomly. He did not give the strongest military disciples a chance to surround him. Their comrades had instead become their hindrance. In such a chaotic scene, he was still able to control the overall battle situation. It was really shocking. And what was even more shocking was that he seemed to really want to rely on his own strength to defeat all these hundreds of military disciples. An old instructor asserted, with his physical strength and Jin Qi, it is impossible for him to last that long. A moment later, half of the military disciples had already fallen. They could no longer fight. Some had even fainted and directly rolled off the platform. This was only because Li Qingshan had held back. Otherwise, all those who had fallen would have been dead. Looking at Li Qingshan again, he was still full of energy and did not show the slightest sign of fatigue. Instead, he became more and more excited. He shouted, "Awesome!" and grabbed a military disciple's leg. He used it as a weapon and swung it a few times before throwing it far away. The military instructors were all surprised. The old instructor who had spoken just now said, "This child is indeed unexpected. However, he will not be able to hold on for much longer." As expected, they saw that Li Qingshan's Jin Qi was already somewhat lacking. He could only use his Jin Qi to block when facing a more threatening attack. All the instructors nodded. However, after another moment, Li Qingshan could not even use his Jin Qi to protect himself. His dantian was completely empty. He was only fighting with the tenacity of an ox and the bravery of a tiger. His body also started to be wounded. Not only did his momentum not weaken, it became even more ferocious and reached its peak state. Chapter 319. Li Qingshan swept away the military disciples like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Without the protection of true qi, he was covered in wounds and gasping for breath. His chest in particular had an extremely obvious burnt black fist mark. His entire body was covered in blood, some of it belonging to others and some of it his own. At his feet, there was a large number of military disciples lying on the ground. The corners of Li Qingshan's mouth curled up and he laughed mischievously. This kind of battle was even more refreshing than drinking 50 jars of fine wine. He could cast aside all his worries. The remaining dozens of military disciples looked at him as if they were looking at a monster. If it wasn't for Han Qie and a few instructors watching from above, and the fact that their lives weren't in danger, they might have already collapsed. No matter how strong the willpower of the military disciples was, it wasn't endless. However, monsters also had times when they were weak. Don't let him recover his strength. Brothers, attack. But this kind of faint hope was quickly extinguished by Li Qingshan. He used his arms to clamp down on two military disciples. With a bit of strength, the two of them immediately stopped breathing and were thrown at his feet. At this moment, a fist arrived in front of him. He used his head to meet it head-on and with a crack, his arm broke. Li Qingshan also shook his head. Although it looked like he would fall to the ground in the next moment, he stubbornly stood until the last military disciple fell. Just now he laughed loudly. It wasn't that Li Qingshan's strength exploded, but that all the 7th-layer disciples were defeated one by one in the chaotic battle. The strongest 8th-layer Qi practitioner, Li Qingshan, risked being injured, took a punch from him and killed him. The mutant Wu Kuei also took a kick from Li Qingshan and rolled down the stairs unconscious. Even an exhausted tiger wasn't something a wolf cub could threaten. At this moment, there was no one left standing on the several hundred steps other than him. Li Qingshan said to Little N, "Did you see that?" Unknowingly, it wasn't just Little N who was watching from below. There were also many people who had heard the news. Disciples of other clans who had rushed over from other islands. All of them looked at him in astonishment. They watched helplessly as he defeated 90% of the military school's disciples by himself. Was he still human? Li Qingshan looked down from above and saw a crowd of people moving about. The grandeur was no less than his duel with Chu Tian. Hua Sengzan, Hao Pingyang and the others were among them. Vaguely, Han Xiongji seemed to be there as well. Li Qingshan, that coward? Has he entered secluded cultivation again to avoid battle? As soon as Han Xiongji returned from a mission, she heard about Li Qingshan's battle with Chu Tian. A few months had passed. That little bit of interest from that day had faded away. From the day she learned that Li Qingshan had entered the school of novels, she knew that he had probably lost the right to pursue her forever. She felt a little regretful. Until I heard that he was going to duel with the genius Chu Tian. Just now, I became interested and went to watch the battle just based on my personal likes and dislikes. He had bet 500 spirit stones on him. In the end, he didn't come. She was instantly disappointed. That little bit of interest turned into disdain. She blamed herself for being blind back then. Hua Sengzan leaned against the door. Of course he came. I told you last time you misunderstood him. He's not someone who would avoid a fight. Han Qiongji continued packing. If you were a girl, I would have suspected that you've fallen for this kid. Or that you're love-struck. So what? Was he beaten half to death by Chu Tian and caused you to lose another 1,000 spirit stones? Hua Sengzan said, a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean, but it's also extremely difficult for a woman to understand a man. This time I won. Han Qiongji stopped what she was doing. You mean? Of course. What I lost last time, I've earned it all back this time. Chu Tian is still bedridden in the medicine family. Also, that brat you mentioned is already at the 7th layer of qi refining. I think it's only a matter of time before he catches up to you. Of course, if we were to fight now, you probably wouldn't be his match. Han Qiongji said, what about him? How is he? He's practically unscathed. I heard that he's been writing a novel recently. Old Wang is going to go crazy when he hears about it. Han Qiongji frowned. Did I make a mistake? Tell me what's going on. Hua Sengzan told her the whole story. He was very articulate. If he was willing to tell a story, he would be the best storyteller. Han Qiongji was fascinated by the story. She hated that she couldn't be there to cheer for Li Qingshan. It turned out that she had really misunderstood him. She threw away the things in her hands. No, I have to go see him. But then she stopped. I didn't go see him when he first joined the School of Novels. If I go see him now, won't he think of me, Han Qiongji, as a snob? But he went into seclusion a few days after joining the School of Novels. She didn't go see him because she had something to do. Also, as a woman, it was really embarrassing to interact with people from the School of Novels. Just as she was feeling conflicted, a legalist disciple came to report. Senior brothers and sisters, there's a show to watch again. Han Che set up a formation and wants to challenge Li Qingshan. Let's go and see. Hua Sengzan said. Han Qiongji went with the flow. Her favorite thing in life was to watch a show. After arriving, Han Qiongji was glad that she didn't miss this battle. Looking at Li Qingshan running amok in the enemy's formation, she suddenly felt her heart beating fast. Her eyes were glued to him. Hua Sengzan smiled and said, who's the love-struck fool now? Han Qiongji blushed, but she didn't show any weakness. Do you have a problem with that? This is the type I like. He's so much better than a pretty boy like you. Hua Sengzan touched his nose. A grown girl can't be kept at home. In the blink of an eye, your childhood sweetheart has become a pretty boy. They had known each other since they were young. Since young, he had been full of charm. As long as it was a girl, they would inevitably have some thoughts about him. She was the only one who maintained a pure friendship with him. It was because Han Qiongji came from a military family and didn't like dissolute men. No matter how strong Hua Sengzan's charm was, it didn't work on her. Han Qiongji chuckled. This time Brother Che is going to lose face. The old man's face must be ugly. Before she finished, a cold snort pierced the ears. Han Qiongji trembled and her face turned pale. Hua Sengzan said, what's wrong? Han Qiongji gritted her teeth. It's that old man. He's so cruel to his own daughter. Hua Sengzan said, no daughter has such a wild mouth. As they spoke, the outcome of the battle was decided. Han Qiongji looked at Li Qingshan, who was covered in wounds and was on the verge of collapse. She shouted, you win. Come down. Wait. I'm going to beat you up now. Li Qingshan turned around and walked towards the high platform. He said to Han Tie. Li Qingshan walked forward step by step until he was in front of Han Tie. A military disciple who was lying on the ground suddenly got up and hugged Li Qingshan's waist. Brothers, stop him. One by one, the military disciples who had lost their ability to fight desperately hugged Li Qingshan's legs. Li Qingshan raised his fist and smashed it towards the military disciple who was hugging his waist. That military disciple simply closed his eyes but didn't let go. He didn't feel any pain. That fist, for some reason, was retracted. Li Qingshan took heavy steps with difficulty, forcefully dragging so many people with him as he made his way towards Han Tie. He walked very slowly. But he was unwavering. With a bang, his feet finally stepped on the high platform and he punched at Han Tie. Han Tie raised his hand to stop the instructor who wanted to stop him. He didn't dodge or block and took the punch head-on. Young general. The eyes of the military disciples all turned red. It was as if they were watching helplessly as the enemy general broke through their formation and killed their commander. Every single one of the military disciples who were still conscious felt humiliated. They clenched their teeth and some of them even shed silent tears like children. "Let him go," Han Tie ordered. "There are still 2 punches left." Li Qingshan stretched his muscles and said, "Such weak punches, even I find it boring to hit myself. You can owe it to me first. Wait for me to recover my strength. Let's hit again." With that, Li Qingshan fell backwards. A golden light flashed and Little and transformed into the Vajra avatar and held Li Qingshan in his arms. He snored and slept soundly. Even in his sleep, there was a satisfied smile on his face. "Leave him to me. He needs some treatment." A woman came to Little Anne's side. She had a picturesque appearance and a gentle voice. She was dressed in white and seemed to emit a gentle light at first glance. There was a white token on her waist with the word, "1", engraved on it. On the platform, a medical disciple who was also dressed in white was working to diagnose the injuries of the military disciples and treat them. Han Tie said to the woman, "Ruexen, thank you. Normal injuries could be treated by the military disciples. They could even recover by themselves with their strong physique. However, if it was more serious, they would have to ask the medical disciples to treat them to ensure that there would be no future trouble. I took your money and helped you eliminate disasters. I guarantee that you will be satisfied." Ruexen smiled gently and was very natural and unrestrained. As the biggest customer of the medical disciples, it was rare for the military to have so much business. "Senior Sister Ruexen, he seems to be fine," a muscular man said in a low voice. "I don't know if he suffered any internal injuries. It would be bad if there were any lingering injuries." "Little sister, don't you think so?" Ruexen squatted down and said to Little Anne, "Net." Although Little Anne felt that there would be no problems with Li Qingshan's body, she was still worried and nodded in agreement. A green leaf flew out of Ruexen's sleeve and expanded with the wind. It lifted Li Qingshan up and a green light rose up and enveloped his body. Some of the small injuries immediately began to heal. More green leaves flew out of his sleeve. There were more than 100 of them and they lifted up all the military disciples who were more seriously injured. This was not a spell but a spiritual tool. A spiritual tool set. Although it was only a high-grade spiritual tool, its value was probably above that of a normal supreme-grade spiritual tool. Ruexen glanced at Li Qingshan on the green leaf and pursed her lips. Such a powerful physique was beyond the knowledge of ordinary people. It was worth researching. Han Tie turned around and returned to the martial arts hall. Han Anjuan sat in the main seat, drinking wine with a 3-legged bronze cup. There were 10 seats on either side of him, 9 of which were occupied by military disciples. Only the seat to Han Anjuan's right was empty. They were all 8th and 9th layer Qi practitioners. On the seat to Han Anjuan's left sat a bald-headed man with a fierce expression. He was also at the 10th layer Qi practitioner. The bald-headed man said, "General, why didn't you let us attack? Why did you let Li Qingshan be so arrogant?" The other 8 people were also filled with righteous indignation. They had watched their comrade be defeated by Li Qingshan in front of everyone. If it wasn't for Han Anjuan's overwhelming power, they would have been unable to hold it in and attacked long ago. In the 100 clans, other than the head disciple, there were a total of 10 disciples. They were the most respected and could be called core disciples. The 9 of them were the true arrogant soldiers and generals. They had the strongest battle power. If any of them participated in the battle just now, the outcome of the battle could be reversed. Han Anjuan said in a low voice, "Isn't it enough to bully the weak with numbers? Do you still want to bully the weak?" The bald-headed man was unconvinced. How can he unleash the power of the encirclement with his bare hands? If he used weapons and fought with real knives and spears, that kid would have died long ago. Han Anjuan slammed the 3-legged bronze cup down. "I think the one who is truly arrogant is not him, but you. If he had used all his means to fight, he would have killed his way here in less than half an hour. You have trained well every day. When it comes to actual combat, you show your true colors. What a mess. Shameful, really shameful. Go back and reflect for 3 days." The usually silent Han Anjuan suddenly opened his mouth and berated them fiercely. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. After receiving the order, only Han Tie was left. Han Anjuan's expression gradually calmed down. He revealed a rare smile. "Tai, you have done well. They need some motivation. Don't think that just because they suffer a little every day, they are much stronger than the disciples of other clans." As the head of the military school, his feelings towards certain things were much sharper. He was much sharper than Lu Changqing. Wasn't there a story about a scholar who ate a bowl of lotus root starch in a farmer's house when he was in dire straits? He only found it to be extremely delicious. Afterwards he became a high-ranking official and tasted the lotus root starch made by renowned chefs everywhere, but none of them tasted the same. In the end he found the original farmer's house and tasted it again, but it no longer tasted the same. He was very interested in finding an opportunity to verify this story. I am Li Qingshan. May I ask for your name, fellow? How can Ru Xen not know of fellow Li's great name? Was there anyone with the surname Ru? Li Qingshan was puzzled. He looked around. Where's little Anne? He's been summoned back by the one-thought master. It's not like you're too sick to get up, so there's no need for you to keep watch over him. As Ru Xen said that, she sat down on the side of the bed and pressed her slender hand against Li Qingshan's chest. His green robes had been ripped to shreds during the battle. Her hand that was as soft as jade slid down from his chest to his abdomen. Your wounds heal very quickly. The life force in your body is basically startling. I ate an unknown fruit when I was young and afterwards I became so strong. Li Qingshan made up a lie casually. Does that count as being interested in me? She must have seen my might in the school of the military and been drawn in by my bearing. Whatever, I can't just let her take the initiative. Li Qingshan has always been a person who does what he wants. He grabbed Ru Xian's hand. I really have to thank you for your meticulous treatment, miss. Ru Xian's eyes narrowed. She tried to pull her hand back but it did not budge. Her face became slightly red but it was from anger. She had no lack of admirers in the 100 schools of thought, but it was really rare to see such a shameless person. Li Qingshan thought that his charm had already reached the level of Hua Sengzan. Ru Xen said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist, if you don't let go, I'll call for help. Only then did Li Qingshan let go of her hand. He said in surprise, Didn't you touch me first? I'm a doctor and you're a patient. This order can't be reversed. What? Fellow Taoist, do you like to be massaged just like now? It's not impossible. This is also one of the services of our school of medicine, but it's charged. Ru Xen lowered her head and smiled faintly. She looked extremely charming. Li Qingshan was both excited and disappointed. All right. How many spirit stones? Lie down. I'll go and prepare. Ru Xen smiled sweetly and turned around to leave. After a moment, a muscular man barged in and roared like thunder. You want a massage? Li Qingshan was stunned. No, no, how can senior sister Ru Xen do this kind of rough work? Come on. The muscular man did not say anything else. He took a step forward and fiercely slapped Li Qingshan's back with a pair of iron palms that could split stone. Your skills are not bad. After a moment, Li Qingshan stood up and sincerely praised. This muscular man was indeed a disciple of the school of medicine. He looked rough, but his skills were extremely meticulous. Whether it was kneading, pinching, patting, or pressing, he completely stretched Li Qingshan's muscles and bones. At the same time he injected a vigorous Imu True Qi into his body. Li Qingshan felt refreshed all over his body. The bruises on his body also disappeared. It was worth the spirit stones. The muscular man roared, Thank you for your patronage. Li Qingshan stood up and took out a green robe from his 100 treasures pouch. He put it on and walked out. Ru Xen laughed. How was it? How was my junior skill? Not bad. Li Qingshan laughed. The muscular man's ferocious slaps had indeed cut off Li Qingshan's thoughts. If others did not have any thoughts, he was too lazy to think about it. It was not like he could not live without a woman. In this world there were countless things to pursue. Ru Xen was slightly surprised. She had thought that Li Qingshan would be embarrassed and displeased or even angry. She had already prepared a set of words. But she did not expect him to be so calm. Furthermore, the way he looked at her had also returned to normal. It made her doubt her own charm. This is your first time coming to Benevolence Island, right? Let me show you around. When the chief disciple came, it was naturally the chief disciple who received him. Although it was a declining school of novels, Li Qingshan had already proven in front of everyone that he was worthy of such treatment. Strolling leisurely with a beauty as his companion, it was quite interesting. Li Qingshan casually asked about the school of medicine. Doctors pay particular attention to curing illnesses and saving lives. Saving lives is one thing, but can cultivators also get sick? Ru Xen said, Of course not, but we can help him. We can make him get whatever illness we want him to get. In the school of medicine they were not some kind nanny character. Instead they were good at using poisons and plagues. Poisons were naturally all kinds of poisons and plagues were plagues. They collected all kinds of diseases and killed their enemies without leaving a trace. Among the gods that the school of medicine worshipped, there was the god of plagues. It's not funny, Li Qingshan said. Is that so? That's strange. In the past, everyone laughed when I said it. Forget it. In life, it is inevitable to meet a few strange people. The illnesses of cultivators are usually not obvious, but they are hidden deep in the body. It may be damage to the meridians or imbalance of the 5 elements. It may not be life-threatening, but over time, it will affect cultivation. Besides these physical illnesses, there are also mental illnesses. I'm good at curing mental illnesses. Physical illnesses are fine, but once you get mental illnesses, it will be even more difficult to advance on the path of cultivation. For example, don't tell Commander Hua of the School of Legalism that I said it. Saving a cultivator's path of cultivation can also be considered saving a life. Li Qingshan grinned. Then why don't you save him? Ru Xian said, he's already beyond cure. There's no cure for an illness that can't be cured. Buddha will save the fated. Suddenly she lowered her voice. Look at the 2 in front. They're also beyond cure. Even gods can't save them. Even gods can't save them. Li Qingshan looked up and saw Qian Rongji supporting Chu Tian as they strolled in the garden. Their faces were full of smiles. If it was not for the fact that he knew Qian Rongji's character and Chu Tian's temperament, he would really think that they were a match made in heaven. What illness are they suffering from? One is crazy and the other is crazy. They're a good match. Li Qingshan smiled and turned to avoid them. Chu Tian was immersed in happiness and did not notice at all. Qian Rongji immediately sensed something and glanced over. When she saw Ru Xian's back, she frowned. That woman was also very troublesome. Li Qingshan mentioned that he once had the intention to study alchemy in the School of Medicine. Ru Xian said, you're right to choose the School of Medicine. The School of Taoism only alchemy, but we can also refine medicine. What's the difference? Alchemy is for cultivation, but refining medicine can cure illnesses. Ru Xian brought Li Qingshan to the School of Medicine's pharmacy for a tour. Sure enough, other than a dazzling array of elixirs, there were also various colored potions and powders. Li Qingshan saw a small box with the words Jade Skin Powder written on it. He asked, what illness is this used to cure? Ru Xian said, it's used to cure the Black Plague. Black Plague? Ru Xian looked at Li Qingshan and said, yes, it refers to people like you. If you use this medicine in 3 days, at most 7 days, you can become a pure pretty boy. Li Qingshan shook his head. He was already used to Ru Xian's words, which did not match her appearance and temperament. However, the medicine refined by the School of Medicine was indeed interesting. At least the School of Taoism's alchemy would not refine invisibility potions. There were even some that he had not even thought about. What illness is this used to cure? Li Qingshan pointed at a glass bottle filled with blue potions. You're talking about water of recollection. As the name suggests, it is naturally used to cure amnesia. If you accidentally forget your surname, drink it and you'll see the results. However, the side effect is that you'll easily lose your bearings. Ru Xian casually said, but she saw Li Qingshan's expression suddenly change. Li Qingshan said, you can remember anything you say. What about your past life? Ru Xian said, unfortunately my strength is not enough to compete with Meng Pa. Li Qingshan was a little disappointed, but then he heard Ru Xian say, however, as long as it's in your mind, you'll be able to remember it after drinking my medicine. Even if you want to know what you ate at noon 10 years ago, it won't be a problem. Can you give it a try? What's our relationship? Your surname is Li. I'm serious. 100 spirit stones per bottle. You don't have to give me that kind of expression. You're joking. Speechless, Li Qingshan drank a spoonful of water of recollection. Those dust-laden past events suddenly shook off the dust and rushed towards his face. They were clearly reflected in his mind. It was a page of a book densely packed with small words. The first sentence was, Zhang Wuji, turn around. Li Qingshan shouted in his heart, my illness can be cured. Chapter 320. That's north. Ru Xian raised her thumb and pointed behind her. Li Qingshan ignored her. How much is this water of recollection? I was just making it for fun. I didn't think I could actually sell it. Ru Xian retracted her smile and extended her hand. 100 spirit stones for 1 bottle. Thank you for your patronage. Li Qingshan clenched his teeth. Weren't you just joking? Ru Xian said, who told you not to laugh? This thing must be very important to you. I'm serious, you're going to make a scene. Li Qingshan grabbed her hand. This water of recollection was indeed very important to him, not only for writing novels but also for little N. 1 spirit stone, 2 spirit stones, 3 spirit stones? What are you doing? Charging. Ru Xen glanced at her hand that was being held. Li Qingshan shook her hand off. Ru Xen smiled. Fine, a doctor should be like a parent. I can't bear to see you so anxious, so I'll give this water of recollection to you. Li Qingshan said, You're that kind? Ru Xen said, But you have to promise me one thing. Li Qingshan said, What is it? Ru Xen lowered her voice. If you fight with the military disciples in the future, use more force. It's best if you beat them to death. A good doctor should be like a parent. Children won't listen unless they're beaten. Okay, I'll go first. Li Qingshan casually agreed, picked up the water of recollection, put it in his interdimensional pouch and hurriedly went back to test it. Wait. 3 spirit stones. What 3 spirit stones aren't you giving? Li Qingshan said, only to see Ru Xen smiling and patting his hand. You really want to charge? That's good. Give me 100 spirit stones. Li Qingshan grabbed Ru Xen's hand and looked straight into her eyes. 4 spirit stones, 5 spirit stones. Ru Xen's smile didn't change as she began to count. However, this place was not a deserted place, it was a place where people came and went. Many disciples of the 100 clans came here to get their medicine. Just now, Li Qingshan grabbing Ru Xen's hand had already attracted some attention. Ru Xen had been famous for a long time and was a famous beauty in the 100 schools of thought. Li Qingshan, on the other hand, was an influential figure who was in the limelight. These two were both head disciples, yet they were holding hands and looking at each other in public, drawing everyone's attention. They whispered into each other's ears and discussed animatedly. What do you think? Could it be that Li Qingshan has that kind of relationship with senior sister Ru Xen? How dare you? 33. 34. Ru Xen's smile didn't change as she snorted. Are you for real? 100 spirit stones, I can afford it. Li Qingshan wanted to teach this unscrupulous woman a lesson. Then come and give it a try. It's rare that spirit stones are so easy to earn. Ru Xen said with a snort. Her face was slightly red, but it was unknown whether it was from embarrassment or anger. Li Qingshan. What are you doing? 2 angry shouts came from outside the pharmacy at the same time. One was Chu Tian's 5-colored true energy, and the other was indeed Han Xiongji, who was also glaring at Li Qingshan. Chu Tian followed Qian Rongji's line of sight and immediately saw Li Qingshan. It could be said that when enemies meet, their eyes turn red. When he saw him with Ru Xen, he couldn't help but follow them. Ever since he came to the School of Medicine and saw Ru Xen for the first time, he treated her as his woman. When he arrived, he saw Li Qingshan holding Ru Xen's hand. Furthermore, Ru Xen seemed to be doing it willingly, which made him feel betrayed. He was so angry that he wanted to kill Li Qingshan with a single palm strike. When Han Xiongji heard that Li Qingshan had woken up, she came to take a look at him. When she did, she was immediately filled with anger. It didn't take her much effort to send those 2 vases away. I've given them a lot of pills. After this closed-door cultivation, their cultivation will definitely improve greatly. You won't lose out if you become my woman. Chu Tian said as he looked at Ru Xen meaningfully. Qian Rongji smiled and said, Senior sister Ru Xen, little Tian is indeed a good man who's worth entrusting your life to. Haha, that's right. Ru Xen felt a little disgusted. There were strange people every year, but there were especially many this year. She originally wanted to remind him that this kind of man was completely reckless and deserved to die. Good man, let this bad woman teach you a lesson. Qian Rongji relaxed. Alright, this woman won't come looking for trouble for the time being. If only all the men in the world were as good as Chu Tian, that would be great. I want to write novels. Li Qingshan said confidently as he returned to Cloud Wisp Island and pushed open the door. Under Lu Chuanfeng's astonished gaze, Li Qingshan returned to the house, took out the bottle of water of memory and placed it on the table. The bottle was about 3 inches tall and filled with a deep blue viscous liquid. It seemed to be a frozen memory. Li Qingshan picked it up and took a small sip. A somewhat bitter taste spread on the tip of his tongue. He quickly closed his eyes and tried hard to recall that forgotten memory. Actually, everyone had a photographic memory and a photographic memory. It was just that the useless information would slowly sink into the depths of the mind. The water of recollection brought back the memories that had been sealed for a long time. Every scene, every sound, and every emotion was clearly displayed in front of him. Li Qingshan opened his eyes and began to write vigorously. That familiar story reappeared in his hands. Lu Chuanfeng stood at the door in a daze. He didn't know what his beloved disciple was, but he didn't dare to disturb him, so he quietly left. Li Qingshan's writing speed became faster and faster. His right hand gradually became a blur. He felt that the ink in the inkstone had been used up after writing a few words, so he ground a small jar and placed it beside him. It was getting late and there was a thick stack of novels on his desk. They were filled with messy handwriting, and the fine weasel hair brush in his hand was almost bald. At this time, the words in his mind gradually became blurry. The effect of the water of memory was gradually wearing off. Li Qingshan put down the brush and rubbed his wrist. Let's call it a day. You wrote all this? Lu Chuanfeng, who had been patient for a long time, rushed out and grabbed the thick stack of papers on the table. Pa. Li Qingshan slapped his hand away. Don't move, I haven't finished writing yet. Saying it out loud made him feel heroic. The glory was no less than defeating 800 military disciples. Although it was just a copy, these were all small details. He had never written so many words in his entire life. Lu Chuanfeng said, How rare. What good things can you write like this? What I've written are all things that regular people would love to see and hear. I guarantee it'll be much more popular than your genteel stuff. Li Qingshan felt like he could already see the path of a successful novelist unfolding before him. As long as he had the water of memory, this path would definitely be easy and free with no cost and great benefits. Although the level of martial arts in Wuxia novels was a little low, he did not expect to rely on it to fight. In the Qi refinement realm, no matter how powerful the characters were described, no matter how abundant the power of faith was, under the restriction of the divine talisman of great creation, the power of the summoned objects would be limited. At most, they would be at the 7th or 8th layer of Qi refinement. 4 ordinary Qi refinement cultivators, being able to summon 4 or 5 fighters of similar cultivation level was already a very good thing. However, with Li Qingshan's strength, this kind of help was not that important. Instead, it would be a waste of the power of faith. The power of faith was an important resource. Through the divine talisman of great creation, it could turn illusory into reality. Right now, the divine talisman of great creation was only at the initial stage. As long as he continued to strengthen it, its effects would not be limited to a few novels. At this time Little An walked in. When he saw Li Qingshan, he revealed an innocent smile. Chapter 321. Little An could always feel the change in Li Qingshan's mood, and strangely tilted her head. Li Qingshan drove Lu Chuanfeng out, closed the door and aimlessly asked Little An about her recent practice. Little An was even more puzzled. Did something happen? Li Qingshan smiled bitterly and rubbed his head. He had never believed himself to be an irresolute person, but he understood now that the reason why he was not irresolute was because he had never encountered something that was truly difficult for him to decide on. Letting her recover her memory and find her original name and identity was once a wish in his heart. Sending her back to her hometown was the first promise he made in this world. But if this old wish and promise came at the same time, he would definitely not be able to smile. I found a good thing that may help you. Li Qingshan pondered for a moment and told the truth. He took out the remaining half of the water of memory and explained its function to Little An. Then Li Qingshan found that Little An's performance was not more calm than his. The hand holding the water of memory even trembled slightly, causing the blue liquid to tremble. There was no excitement and joy of being able to recover her memory. She lowered her eyes, and her long eyelashes cast a shadow on her big eyes. I don't want to drink it. What? Li Qingshan asked despite already knowing the answer. They were connected, so how could he not understand her worries? If it were possible, he would rather not know about the existence of this potion, even if he could not obtain the power of belief through writing novels. But as an adult, he could not let a child be willful, and he could not let himself be willful. He had to do what was good for her. Don't be willful. Try it. I just tried it and the effect is not bad. Maybe it really works. Of course it may not work, so don't expect too much. Little An raised her head. She looked straight into Li Qingshan's eyes and said with a heartbreaking expression, I'm not going anywhere, okay? Li Qingshan's heart gradually became firm and returned to normal. He grinned and kissed her forehead heavily. Wherever you go, I'll go. Xiaoan closed his eyes and gulped down the rest of the water of memory in the bottle. It was a slightly bitter liquid. Along the throat. It flowed into his stomach and turned into a mysterious energy that spread throughout his body. It soared straight into the sky. After a long time Little An opened his eyes. Li Qingshan said, "How is it?" Little An shook his head. "I don't feel anything." Ever since the day she started cultivating the path of white bone and great beauty, her soul had been growing. After countless days and nights of cultivation, her bones had long since become as hard as diamond. Not only was it difficult for external forces to damage them, even foreign energies were unable to seep into them. Therefore, whether it was absorbing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth or taking elixirs, to her it didn't have any effect. The only thing it strengthened was her body. Only by using flames to devour flesh and blood and refine white bones was her only path of cultivation. The effects of the water of memory were naturally ineffective against her. Li Qingshan heaved a sigh of relief. "I knew it. The effects of that woman's medicine aren't that good. Don't worry. You can slowly think about your memories." Little An grunted softly and asked curiously, "That woman? She's a messy woman. Don't worry about her. Come, take a look at my novel." Li Qingshan carried her onto his lap and showed her the manuscript that he had painstakingly copied. Little An read very seriously and pointed out the strange parts of the book from time to time. The so-called strange parts referred to the fact that Wuxia novels were not acclimatized to this world. There were many problems with the usage of words and allusions. Li Qingshan felt his head swell again. As it turned out, copying novels was not that easy. What should I do? He had not read many novels. It had only been 1 or 2 years since he left Crouching Ox Village. His understanding of this world could not be considered deep. Little An smiled. "I have an idea." Lu Chuanfeng bit the tip of his pen, trying to guess just what this disciple of his had written. Li Qingshan suddenly strode in. "Do you have a novel to read?" Lu Chuanfeng said, "What do you want to read?" Li Qingshan said, "Not yours. It's best if it's some famous and popular ones. The more the better." "What's wrong with mine?" Lu Chuanfeng immediately refuted. He was no longer the master of Moon Breeze from before. He immediately took out a letter from his 100 treasures pouch. "Take a look. How did they praise me?" Li Qingshan shot a glance at him, and Lu Chuanfeng took out a great pile of books from his 100 treasures pouch obediently. There were several hundred of them. Li Qingshan picked them up and left. Lu Chuanfeng called out from behind, "Be careful. These are all prized copies." His monk robes drifted about as the One-Thought Master arrived on Cloud Wisp Island silently. He arrived outside the bamboo building where Li Qingshan resided. His gaze pierced through the layers of bamboo and saw 2 figures, one large and one small, illuminated by a lone lantern. Little An lay on the floor reading. He flipped through the pages quickly, and over a dozen books had already piled up beside him. Li Qingshan stood there as if he was thinking about something. He would twist his body from time to time and swing his fists and feet. He was currently summarizing and comprehending the gains and losses of the battle today. If he were to read a book, he would need to read 7 out of 10 pages. However, when he recalled the battle today, it was like a movie was playing through his head. He could clearly understand every single punch and kick. He could even clearly remember how he had defeated every single military disciple. Gradually, the figures in the surroundings dimmed, and the expressions and figures of every single military disciple blurred. All that remained was a group of military disciples that seemed like matchsticks on the long flight of stairs, all rushing up. He imitated their moves and how they exerted their strength. The lantern light projected his shadow onto the wall, moving quickly and forcefully in the narrow space. One of them moved while the other remained still, but it formed a wondrous, warm atmosphere. The One-Thought Master found it strangely familiar. Only after quite a while of thought did he remember that this was the feeling of home. In order to save some lamp oil, his mother would sew clothes under the moonlight, while he would swat away the fireflies in the courtyard. The One-Thought Master dismissed these thoughts in a hurry and sighed silently. How was it possible for a monk to constantly think about the word, home? In the past few days, Li Qingshan's performance that completely exceeded regular cultivators had only made him worry more and more. They were not related by blood. She was still young right now, but once she grew a few years older and developed those feelings, it would probably be even more difficult to sever them. It would be even more messy, and it would be even more difficult to sever them. After hesitating for a moment, the One-Thought Master turned around and left. He had to make his fellow disciples enlighten her with the supreme truths of Buddhism during this assembly of Dharma so that she could sever her ties with the world. The rustling of pages and the sounds of punches and kicks stopped one after another. "I'm done." Li Qingshan sank his chi into his dantian and smiled. If the situation today repeated itself, he was confident he could achieve victory even more easily. Little smiled. Let's begin. Under the lantern light, Li Qingshan wrote while Little spoke. The two of them modified the novel bit by bit to make it more suitable for this era. Before they knew it, time passed by bit by bit. Chapter 322. Did you really write this? Lu Chuanfeng held a thick stack of manuscripts and said in disbelief. There were several 100,000 words at the very least, yet Li Qingshan had only used a few days. You didn't copy it, did you? Li Qingshan said without any confidence. Nonsense. Have you read the same novel before? Lu Chuanfeng said, you can't gather any power of belief from plagiarism at all, no matter how well you copy it. For example, the divine talisman of merit. No matter how far away the cultivator who did good was, even if there was someone with the exact same name and appearance as him, the merit would never go to the wrong person. This was the wonders of divine talismans. Li Qingshan's heart pounded. He had copied something from his past life, and it belonged to another world. Only in this world could he be considered an original work. All right. Let me take a look and see what you've written. I'll help you edit it. Lu Chuanfeng leaned over the table and read. Li Qingshan strode out. Over the past few days he had been copying and editing. Even with Little Anne's assistance, it still left him dizzy. After editing his Virgo novel, the one-thought master summoned Little Anne back to the Ansrava temple to listen to the scriptures. He said he had to make preparations for the upcoming assembly of Dharma. Little Anne only said he would find a way to get some more pills before leaving in a hurry. It made Li Qingshan rather apologetic. After dealing with the matter of the School of Novels, it was time for him to properly gather his resources and prepare for the final step. Although it was called the final step, Li Qingshan dared not underestimate it at all. It was very likely that the difficulty of this step would be greater than all the previous steps combined. There were many living examples around him, such as Lu Chuanfeng, Hua Sengzan, Ruexan, and so on. They were all 10th layer Qi practitioners. There was also the dangerous heavenly tribulation that lay between them. He could not afford to be careless. Although he still had a lot of the resources he had collected from the massacre in the underground world, he still had a lot left. Spirit stones were still manageable, but spiritual tools and talismans. However, it was not that simple. After arriving at the 100 schools of thought, he had also asked Sun Fubai about it and found out that the School of Miscellany, which specialized in this kind of business, rarely bought these things. Even if they did, the price was very low. The world had been peaceful for so long that there were very few fights and killings. Without demand there was no market. On the contrary, the number of Qi practitioners had increased exponentially. As the number of spirit grasses decreased, the price of high-grade medicinal pills continued to rise. Furthermore, Li Qingshan himself had a lot of concerns. The origins of these things could not be considered legitimate. If he were to sell these things on a large scale, it was hard to guarantee that it would not attract the attention of people with ulterior motives. After interacting with people like Chen Rongji and Hua Sengzan, Li Qingshan deeply understood that there were many smart people in the world. One small clue would reveal the general trend. For some people it was an instinct. He admitted that he did not have the ability to do so, so all he could do was to be as cautious as possible and not leave any flaws. After thinking for a moment, Li Qingshan's gaze gradually became firm. I'll take it step by step. The first step was to issue missions in the mission hall of Contention Island. Li Qingshan's gaze constantly flickered across the notice board. Very soon he locked onto one of them. It was a mission issued by the Department of Agriculture, which was to water the wheat fields. It sounded simple, but it clearly stated that the disciple had to know the spiritual rain technique. The spiritual rain technique was a large-scale healing technique. Not only could it heal wounds, but it could also recover spiritual qi. If it were used in battle, it would be a decisive technique. Due to the difficulty of learning it was very high, there obviously weren't many people interested in it in this day and age. If it were not for the fact that Li Qingshan possessed the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression, which allowed him to master any water element technique with ease, he would not have wasted time learning this technique either. Perhaps it was exactly because of this that the reward for this mission was rather generous. It was clearly winter on the Longevity Island of the Department of Agriculture, but the island was brimming with life. Earth Elemental Huang sat on the ridge of the fields and smoked. He drew a circle on the vast golden wheat field in front of him. Every inch and 3 centimeters of rain falls on this land. If you miss a centimeter, a spiritual stone will be deducted. Do you understand? He did not give Li Qingshan any special treatment because of his outstanding performance recently. Li Qingshan said politely, "I understand." He closed his eyes and prepared for a while. A streak of light rose up from his hand and flew into the air. It turned into a large, fine layer of spiritual rain and fell from the sky. The wheat sprouts that had originally been rather withered immediately straightened up, as if they were absorbing the spiritual rain. Earth Elder Huang was slightly surprised. Originally, he thought he would have to use the spiritual rain technique several times before he could finish watering such a large field of wheat, but Li Qingshan had only used it once. The area was startlingly large, and if he counted carefully, the amount of spiritual rain that fell was exactly 1 centimeter and 3 centimeters. Well done. Li Qingshan smiled and accepted the spiritual stones. These spiritual stones sure were easy to earn. He only needed to use the technique once. Apart from watering the wheat field, there seemed to be missions to water the medicinal garden for the School of Medicine in the mission hall. You want to learn alchemy from me? Ru Xian sized up Li Qingshan with a strange gaze. He had a sincere expression and was even holding a watermelon in his hand. This is just a gift for becoming my disciple. If you agree, I can pay you spiritual stones. Of course, the price can't be too excessive. This was Li Qingshan's second step, to master alchemy as soon as possible. And this watermelon was plucked by Earth Elder Huang from the melon field next to him for perfectly completing the mission. The School of Medicine has alchemy classes, and it doesn't cost a single spiritual stone. It's too much of a waste of time. Li Qingshan shook his head. Although the professor's lessons were not bad, they had to consider each disciple's comprehension ability and slow down the process. Although explaining the profound and simple terms was interesting, it would also waste a lot of time. Moreover, the level of those professors might not even be comparable to the one in front of him. Although Ru Xen had a rogue mouth, she was a good person. Later on, he asked her for water of recollection twice, but she did not accept spiritual stones. Moreover, as a great beauty, she did not put on any airs, so she naturally became his first choice. Ru Xen said, "Let me think about it. Let's eat the watermelon first." He cut open the watermelon, and the bright red flesh exuded a strange fragrance. Li Qingshan took a bite and it melted in his mouth. It was as sweet and fragrant as honey, and it even contained a wave of spiritual energy that merged into his Dantian Sea of Qi. Li Qingshan pondered. The planting techniques of the School of Agriculture were indeed profound, and their effects were not inferior to ordinary pills. Unfortunately, he was not a disciple of the School of Agriculture. Compared to alchemy, he preferred planting. Ru Xen was still looking at Li Qingshan. Her pearly white teeth bit into the watermelon, and her pink lips were dyed red. Then, with a slurping sound, she interrupted Li Qingshan's thoughts. "Can you be a little quieter?" Ru Xian said, "Children don't know anything. To eat a watermelon you have to suck it." Li Qingshan rolled his eyes and put down the watermelon skin. He saw that the large watermelon had entered her stomach in the blink of an eye. Ru Xen wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "No." "What? I've thought about it. No, send the guest away. Spit out my gift of becoming my disciple." Li Qingshan really wanted to strangle her. "Do you really want it?" Ru Xen pretended to stick her finger into her mouth as if saying, "If you want it, I'll spit it out." Although Li Qingshan felt a little disgusted, he gritted his teeth and said, "Spit it out." Ru Xen spat out a seed. "Go back and plant it yourself, idiot." "Ah." Li Qingshan grabbed the seed and showed a regretful expression. He shook his head and sighed. "What a pity, what a pity." Ru Xen said, "What's a pity?" Li Qingshan said, "Originally, I wanted to use the true spirit pill as payment, but she didn't appreciate it. I'll go find Jichenzi. When it comes to alchemy, the school of Taoism is still the best." "Wait, you're talking about the true spirit pill?" Ru Xian's expression changed. The true spirit pill was a crucial pill for Qi practitioners to foundation establishment. She was currently at the 10th layer. She had reached this threshold, so she could not help but be interested. Li Qingshan said, "Yeah. You have true spirit pills? I don't believe you." Ru Xen recovered her composure and shook her head with a gentle smile. Right now, true spirit pills were priceless in the cultivation world. One of the most important spirit herbs to refine true spirit pills, the blue butterfly flower, was almost extinct. The blue butterfly flower only grew in spirit stone mines and was not something that could be cultivated by spirit-gathering formations. Across the entire Clear River Prefecture, sects and clans that possessed spiritual stone mines could be described as few and far between. After all these years of mining, The blue butterfly flowers they produced became even fewer. They did not even have enough to refine pills for themselves, much less sell them. She had been in the school of medicine for many years, but she only possessed 2 right now. With Li Qingshan's background, it was impossible for him to possess something like that. However, little did she know that not only did Li Qingshan possess true spirit pills, but he also possessed more than one. He possessed a great pile of blue butterfly flowers as well, and he had once possessed a field of blue butterfly flowers. Li Qingshan said nothing. Chapter 323. Did you really write this? Lu Chuanfeng's eyes were slightly red. He had originally read it with the intention of guiding Li Qingshan and restoring his dignity as a teacher. Well, martial arts. It seemed to be a world without cultivators. The setting was quite plausible, but this style of writing was a little too simple. There wasn't even an opening poem. Yes, Qingshan came from the mountains. It was too much of a stretch for him to write a poem. At a time like this, he would have to rely on his teacher. Lu Chuanfeng slowly read on with a stomach full of opinions. Then he gradually forgot his original goal and was captured by the interlocking plot of the book. He read page after page, and by the time he came back to his senses, he had already reached the end. The sky had already darkened. The writing style of the entire novel was completely different from those he had read before. It was grand in concept and detailed in description. Now that he thought about it, all the scenes were still vivid in his mind. Not only was this novel not bad, it was unbelievably good. His original intentions were completely wasted. Li Qingshan said, "Of course. Impossible, this is impossible," Lu Chuanfeng mumbled. He had been writing for so many years and knew the difficulty of it. "Ha, I'm a genius." Li Qingshan patted Lu Chuanfeng's shoulder. Indeed, a master's story was powerful. Of course, little Anne's localized revision had also contributed greatly. "Ha, what's this?" Li Qingshan peered into himself and discovered that a speck of light was currently flickering in his originally dull divine talisman of merit. Suddenly he raised his head and looked at Lu Chuanfeng. He suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. He had been worried that it would be possible to collect wishes. Would it be possible to collect the power of will? Wouldn't this be the first reader? Lu Chuanfeng could not find a better answer, so he could only accept Li Qingshan's explanation. It was probably because he came from the pugilistic world that he could write about the matters of the pugilistic world so vividly and easily. "Qingshan, you'll definitely not regret it. I'll send you to the Cloud Wisp Society right now. Have you thought of a pen name?" Li Qingshan was stumped. Frowning and thinking hard, an idea flashed in his mind. He raised his index finger and said, "How about Golden Dragon?" These were the 2 authors that he was most likely to plagiarize. Merging their names into one flawlessly. Lu Chuanfeng staggered. It wasn't easy to find a more lame name than this. He roared, "Do you think you're in a village giving names to children? We are novelists and our pen names are our second lives." It was Li Qingshan's first time facing Lu Chuanfeng. He felt a little helpless and mumbled, "The Golden Dragon is so domineering and auspicious." He racked his brains again. As a great author who had written millions of words, the difficulty of choosing a pen name with just a few words was indeed a little embarrassing. Wuji. Wuji, not bad, right? As a novelist, how can I have the same name as a character in my book? What will they think if they find out? Qingshan. I just removed my surname. Beloved disciple, please be more serious. Li Qingshan said, "I understand. Then I'll call you Li Qingshan." "What, isn't that his real name?" "Yes, it's his real name." Li Qingshan smiled, his whole body brimming with the light of confidence. Recently, he had been too distracted by mundane matters, and had almost forgotten his long-cherished dream. One day, he would spread the name Li Qingshan throughout the 9 provinces, and let billions of people sing his praises. Although this was more like a child's fantasy towards the sky, which would only make people laugh out loud. Even he found it amusing when he thought about it, but it was precisely because of this that it could be called a dream. Li Qingshan felt even more convinced that having Ru Xan teach him alone was the correct choice. Otherwise, who knew when he would be able to learn alchemy in its entirety and refine true spirit pills with the interference of so many other matters. One of our Nighthawks has been killed. It might be related to the White Lotus sect. Don't worry, it's just an investigation mission. If you find the culprit, you can take revenge for our people along the way. If you can't, you can just report back. Li Qingshan said, "My previous trial mission was also an investigation mission." In the end, not only did he have to kill the zombie Taoist, but he even had to deal with the entire Hawkwolf Guard of Jiaoping City. Hua Sengzan said, as long as altar lords don't appear, regular Qi practitioners probably won't be able to harm you at all. Commander Gu has surrounded and hunted down most of the altar lords of the White Lotus sect a long time ago. The remaining ones are too afraid to show themselves. There's another reward for completing the mission. What reward? Hua Sengzan smiled. The one you've been looking forward to all this time. Go to the Rui Commandery and see Commander Gu. This had been a tradition of the Hawkwolf Guard for many years. New members had the right to see their superior commander. If they were lucky and caught his attention, there would be many benefits. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.